Chapter 674. But my wind blade isn't that easy to dodge. Along with Lu Chuanfeng's sinister laughter, the green wind blade that was dodged by the lady in black drew an arc in the air and quickly came back to Lu Chuanfeng. It was coming back at an even faster speed, and there were silver lightning patterns on the wind blade. Bang! A heavy muffled sound immediately rang out, and a circle of surging and vigorous green chi waves swept out in all directions. The incomparably sharp wind blade swept up a terrifying might and solidly struck the back of the black-clothed woman. A series of dazzling blood flowers fluttered in the sky. The black-clothed woman's delicate body trembled. She staggered and almost fell. A long and deep wound immediately opened up on her back. "Hey, how do you feel?" Lu Chuanfeng smiled disdainfully, and then his body moved, sweeping up a fierce gust of wind and rushing toward the lady in black. "Let me see who you are." Lu Chuanfeng reached out with one hand, and like lightning, he reached for the black cloth that covered the lady's face. However, right at this moment, the black-clothed woman's pair of demonic and charming taiji diagram eyes emitted a strange energy fluctuation. Buzz! In an instant, the space where the two were immediately began to rotate in a strange way. Lu Chuanfeng felt an invisible force pulling his body, and at the same time, the space around him began to distort. It was both real and illusory, as if he had fallen into an illusion. There seemed to be an illusion that the universe was rotating and all things were shifting. Greater teleportation technique. Whoosh! In the next second, Lu Chuanfeng and the lady in black were like two black and white dots in the Tai Chi Yin-Yang array, rotating with the force, and their positions were immediately changed. Then, the distorted space immediately returned to normal. Lu Chuanfeng was surprised. At this moment, he unexpectedly found that his position and the lady in black had been switched. A second ago, Lu Chuanfeng was in the direction of the city gate, and the lady in black was in the direction of the city gate. Now, Lu Chuanfeng was in the direction of the city gate, and the lady in black was in the direction of the city gate. This was just like the legendary heaven and earth teleportation technique. Without the slightest hesitation, the black-clothed lady swapped positions with Lu Chuanfeng and threw out a couple of palm strikes. Then, she turned around and turned into a ray of light that shot toward the sky outside the city. Bang! Lu Chuanfeng's eyes turned cold as the mighty palm energy fell down. Immediately, a layer of condensed wind blades appeared in front of him. The dense wind blades intertwined and rotated, turning into a wall of wind blades. All the Zhen Yuan palm energy that touched the wall of wind blades was smashed into pieces. "Do you think it's that easy to escape?" Lu Chuanfeng sneered and chased after him without hesitation. However, at this moment, a furious, thunderous momentum came from the direction of Shanghai City without any warning. Lu Chuanfeng's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly turned around. A tremendous pressure that was as terrifying as a mountain came crashing down, stirring up the sky in all directions. A huge meteorite that was 1,000 feet wide blossomed with incomparably brilliant silver starlight. Layers upon layers of airwaves were comparable to the violent waves of a tsunami that soared into the sky, causing the heavens and earth to lose their color. Lu Chuanfeng's pupils involuntarily shrank. Boom! The meteorite-like energy shockwave that was 1,000 feet wide collided with Lu Chuanfeng's body with an earth-shattering bang. The heavens and earth shook. A vast and terrifying silver light spread out in the sky, and an endless, powerful aftershock spread out in all directions. Buildings and skyscrapers were crushed into ruins. Lu Chuanfeng, who was caught off guard, was directly sent flying by the powerful force and heavily smashed into the city wall behind him. Rumble, more than half of the tall and magnificent city wall collapsed with a loud rumble. Rocks of all sizes were piled up like a swarm of moths, scattering everywhere. Then, a blurry figure shrouded in dazzling silver light immediately shot out of the city. In the blink of an eye, the mysterious black-clothed lady disappeared into the horizon. Damn, what's going on? Is that person's helper? How fierce! Even Lu Chuanfeng was sent flying. I don't know. Perhaps his goal is to snatch the heaven and earth yellow token. The series of shocking events had already shaken the entire Shanghai city, but due to the fact that the black-robed woman had accelerated the pace of the battle, everyone could only witness the overall situation of the battle when they arrived, but they were unable to do anything to stop her. While the various forces were shocked by the black-clothed lady's powerful cultivation, they were also puzzled by the mysterious person who attacked Lu Chuanfeng. Some thought that person was her partner, while some thought that he was only after the heaven and earth yellow token. However, no matter what, the fact that the black-clothed lady was injured and escaped Shanghai City was definitely the best opportunity to snatch the earth yellow token from her. Let's go. After him. Immediately, many people rushed out of the city. However, there were also many people who were hesitant and did not want to offend the Northern Qian Chamber of Commerce and the mysterious black-clothed man. Boom! In the next moment, a majestic and furious aura exploded from the collapsed city wall. Everyone in Shanghai City had a change of expression. They saw Lu Chuanfeng flying out of the ruins with a pale face and appearing on top of the city gate. The extremely cold aura sent chills down everyone's spine. Lu Chuanfeng's figure was in a sorry state, and there was a faint trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles made a clear, cracking sound. Dense, killing intent surged out of his eyes. Don't blame me for not warning all of you. The Earth Yellow token belongs to the Northern Qian Chamber of Commerce. You can come and try if you dare to touch it. His furious aura shook the eardrums of everyone in the city. Subsequently, Lu Chuanfeng waved his hand, and a 100-foot-wide wind blade slashed down like an attack from the heavens. It directly split the huge city wall into two, splitting it in half from the middle. The area where the wall was split was extremely neat and tidy. Everyone's expression changed again and again. This time, Lu Chuanfeng was truly enraged. The black-clothed man had managed to escape from under his nose twice in a row. This was something he absolutely could not tolerate. Under everyone's fearful gaze, Lu Chuanfeng turned into a green ray and disappeared in the sky outside the city. In a lush mountain forest dozens of miles away from Shanghai City, the vast mountain forest was like a green ocean. Dust and smoke lingered in the air as the howls of wild beasts could be heard from time to time in the distance. Swish! At this moment, Chu Hen was moving in the forest at an extremely fast speed. Lush, towering trees gathered together, blocking out the sun and the sky, blocking out the warm sunlight. In the gloomy environment, only a few faint beams of light shone through the branches and leaves. Chu Hen's eyes and ears were alert in all directions. As he sensed the slightest movement in his surroundings, his deep eyes glowed with a profound light. The person who attacked Lu Chuanfeng in Shanghai City was Chu Hen. Not for any other reason, but because the mysterious black-clothed woman was most likely Yi Yao. Although Chu Hen did not see her face at close range, her figure was extremely similar to Yi Yao's. Moreover, there was the peculiar yin and yang energy. Of course, this was mostly because of Chu Hen's expectations. He had to complete the last step to confirm whether that person was really her. Whoosh! Chu Hen shuttled through the forest like a ghost. Soon, he could not help but frown. Her aura had disappeared. She's gone? What's that? The corner of Chu Hen's eyes flashed. Then, his body moved, and he landed on the middle branch of a towering tree. On the branch, there were a few drops of scarlet blood stains. Chu Hen bent down and touched the blood with his finger. It was fresh blood. It was definitely fresh. She was badly injured. Under such circumstances, she should not have been able to run far. Chapter 675. Buzz. Just as Chu Hen was deep in thought, an ice-cold aura suddenly assaulted him from above the towering tree. Chu Hen was alarmed. He suddenly raised his head, and a pair of familiar, yet strange Tai Chi pattern pupils were reflected in his eyes. An incomparably fierce pressure swept over like a mountain. The branches below, Chu Hen's body instantly broke and shattered. A pair of ice-cold hands firmly pressed down on Chu Hen's shoulders. Then, like a leopard pouncing on its prey, it directly pressed Chu Hen to the ground. Bang! Chu Hen fell to the ground, and the black-clothed woman's hands pressed down on Chu Hen's shoulders, making him unable to move. At the same time, the black cloth covering her head quietly slid down, and an exquisite and beautiful face was exposed to the air. It was a lively and adorable face, looking especially pure and moving. However, the pair of demonic Tai, Qi, Yin, and Yang pattern pupils appeared especially bewitching. Looking at the beautiful and familiar face in front of him, Chu Hen raised his eyebrows, and a thick look of amazement emerged on his face. However, there was not the slightest fluctuation of emotion on the other party's face. There was only indifference and coldness in those strange pupils. In the next moment, one of her hands tightly clutched onto Chu Hen's throat, while the other hand was raised up high. Wong! The space faintly trembled. A black and a white cyclone rapidly rotated in the center of her palm, and instantly condensed into a sharp thorn that alternated between black and white. Without saying a word, she waved the thorn without any hesitation, and fiercely stabbed it directly towards the space between Chu Hen's eyebrows. Chu Hen's pupils violently shrank, reflecting the sharp thorn, and thick disbelief emerged in his eyes. Little Yao. The two heavy and slightly panicked words exploded in the black-clothed woman's ears. These two simple words seemed to cross mountains and seas of people, passing through layers upon layers of people, and reach the other party's ears, pouring into the lake in the depths of her heart, and gently throwing a stone into it, causing layer after layer of ripples. Kacha! The sharp thorn came to an abrupt halt when it was only a finger's width away from Chu Hen's forehead. Then it exploded into countless crystal fragments. Little Yao. These two words seemed to have an extraordinary magical power. Her demonic Tai, Qi pattern quickly faded away and returned her normal eyes. The two of them looked at each other, and a faint ripple appeared in her eyes. She seemed to find the man in front of her familiar. Then she suddenly closed her eyes, and an endless sense of weakness filled her entire face. Bang! That soft and delicate body directly laid in Chu Hen's arms and fainted on his chest. Who? Chu Hen breathed a sigh of relief, and his taut heartstrings relaxed in an instant. He laid on the ground with his head raised, his hands gently hugging the shoulders of the girl in his arms. An indescribable sorrow emerged in his heart. The last step had been verified. She was indeed Yi Yao. What the hell happened? Why did she come to the East Victory State from the 100-Nation State, which was tens of thousands of miles away? What exactly happened to her all these years? As a result, the innocent girl who was as kind as a piece of white paper turned into the ruthless and vicious person she was today. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Chu Hen wouldn't have believed that the person who killed so many experts in Haitian City and Shanghai City that day was the cute little girl who always thought of others, followed him since young, and called him Brother Chu Hen. Who? Chu Hen let out another deep sigh of relief. Then, he slowly got up and carefully helped Yi Yao up. This wasn't a place to stay for long. Those people from Shanghai City were probably chasing after them at full speed. They definitely couldn't stay here. Immediately, Chu Hen carried Yi Yao. Her delicate body was as light as a goose feather, and she didn't weigh much. That fair and delicate little face leaned against Chu Hen's chest, making one's heart ache. Chu Hen had mixed feelings in his heart, but more than that, he was confused. Then, his figure moved, and he disappeared on the spot. After a while, in a mountain stream, water from a waterfall fell from the sky, crashing into the pool and splashing the water. Next to the rock beside the pool, Chu Hen held a clean white cloth in his hand and wiped the wound on Yi Yao's back. Yi Yao leaned against the rock, completely unconscious. Chu Hen frowned and carefully tore open the clothes on her back. A wound that was nearly half a meter long stretched from her right shoulder to her left waist. Blood was still flowing out from the wound, dyeing Yi Yao's fair skin red. She's actually injured so badly? Chu Hen's eyes were slightly cold. Then, he took out a jade bottle, pulled out the cork, and poured some white powder along the wound on Yi Yao's back. This was a kind of Jin Chuang medicine called white cloud powder. It was a sacred healing medicine that was specially developed by Hua Shui. Before they departed from Mount Kunliu, she had given each of them a bottle in case they needed it. The effects of the white cloud powder were truly miraculous. After applying it for about 5 minutes, the bleeding immediately stopped, and there was no more bleeding. Apart from its strong ability to stop bleeding, this medicine could also speed up the healing of wounds. A normal wound would be healed in half a day at most, but Yi Yao's injury was too serious, and she might not be able to recover so quickly. Then, Chu Hen took out some clean gauze and bandaged Yi Yao's wound. Then, he took out a hooded robe and overcoat and helped her change out of the black clothes that were stained with blood. Chu Hen's movements were very gentle, as if he was taking care of a newborn baby. After doing all this, a faint and relaxed smile appeared on Chu Hen's face. Finally, I've found you. Ever since she was young, Yao had always treated Chu Hen the same way. Whether it was when she was plotted against in Flaming Rain City and almost became a cripple, or when she was chased all over the capital. In her heart, there was always that big brother Chu Hen. When Chu Hen found out that Yi Yao had betrayed the Sacred Star Empire for him and had risked her life to follow his footsteps, Chu Hen was not only touched, but also felt a sense of responsibility. Finding Yi Yao was the responsibility that he had to bear. Now, his wish had finally been fulfilled. However, Chu Hen also understood that the most important thing now was to move Yi Yao here. Otherwise, with the fanaticism of those people in Shanghai City for the Heaven and Earth Mystic Yellow Order, they would come looking for him sooner or later. Then, Chu Hen helped the unconscious Yi Yao up and carried her on his back. Chu Hen's long robe completely wrapped around Yi Yao. His hat covered her head, and her soft breathing lingered in Chu Hen's ears. Her breath smelled like orchids, like a child sleeping soundly. However, just as Chu Hen was about to leave, a series of rapid sounds of wind breaking suddenly came towards this side, and in the next second, more than a dozen fierce figures appeared in the mountain stream. Chapter 676. It seems that our luck is not bad. We found the Heaven and Earth Mystic Yellow Order first. Along with complacent strange laughter, more than a dozen fierce figures immediately appeared in the mountain stream. The person in the lead was a sinister man in his 30s. There was a sinister scar on the left side of his face. When he smiled, the scar twisted like a centipede and was abnormally ugly. His ridiculing gaze contained some rumination as he stared at Chu Hen, who was carrying Yi Yao on his back. This group of people was not from a sect. At first glance, one could tell that they were outlaws who lived on the edge of a knife. These people had a characteristic, which was that they were vicious and ruthless. Moreover, they never cared about the consequences when doing things. As long as it was related to benefits, it was enough to make them fight with their lives on the line, obediently hand over the Heaven and Earth Mystic Yellow Order. The sinister man stretched out his palm towards Chu Hen. Chu Hen unhurriedly smoothed the long robe on Yi Yao's body and slightly lowered his wide hat. Then, he said lightly, "Will you let us go if we give you the Heaven and Earth Mystic Yellow Order? Hey, what do you think?" The sinister man said contemptuously, "If you behave, we will leave both of your corpses intact." Intact corpses? Hey! A frivolous smile appeared at the corner of Chu Hen's mouth. He replied coldly, "The Heaven and Earth Mystic Yellow Order is with me. If you have the ability, come and get it. Come and get it." In an instant, a cold aura emerged from Chu Hen's body. The sinister man's eyes were full of killing intent. You're courting death. Chop off the hands and feet of this arrogant brat for me." Yes. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone pounced on Chu Hen like hungry tigers and wolves. Each of their bodies erupted with a fierce aura to oppress him. Their swords lit up and cold light flickered. Several long swords chopped towards Chu Hen's head. Go to hell, idiots! One attack after another fell down. In the face of this group of fierce and wolf-like attacks, Chu Hen stood still and did not dodge. Zung! A high-pitched cry of a sharp weapon suddenly rang out. Chu Hen waved his arm, and a dazzling light instantly blossomed in the air. Everyone's pupils violently shrunk. Following that, scarlet blood violently danced, and a few arms that were holding onto weapons were immediately thrown out. What followed was a series of heart-wrenching, lung-splitting screams. The hands of the people who had slashed at Chu Hen were all cut off. Fresh blood gushed out, and it was a frightening sight to behold. What? The middle-aged man in the lead frowned. He saw that a Grim Reaper scythe had appeared in Chu Hen's hand at some point. The sharp blades of the scythe were shrouded in a thick aura of death, and traces of blood flowed down the scythe's blade. Oomph. Chu Hen sneered incessantly. Following that, he raised his scythe once again. A dazzling crescent moon arc that was tens of meters long streaked across the sky. Hiss! The sound of the sharp weapon piercing through flesh could be clearly heard. Several round human heads were sent flying. Several people were beheaded in an instant. Chu Hen seized a chance and jumped up. Carrying Yi Yao on his back, he directly dashed into the crowd like a bolt of lightning. The sharp scythe emitted a dazzling black light. As he swung it with all his strength, it cut through the bodies of the two people in front of him as if it was cutting through tofu. The extremely sharp Grim Reaper scythe was like cutting through paper. The bodies of the two people were immediately cut into two, diagonally and horizontally. Screams could be heard continuously, and a bloody scene unfolded. This scythe that he had taken from the man of the Fong clan was like a blade of death in Chu Hen's hands. He killed people as if he was cutting melons and vegetables. Unstoppable. It was a one-sided massacre. Chu Hen quickly harvested the lives of the people. The red rain drifted between the sky and the earth. Bastard, the sinister middle-aged man in the lead, opened his eyes wide, and he was quite angry. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 of his subordinates were all slaughtered by Chu Hen. What was more frightening was that his calm eyes showed no emotion at all. These people who were killed were like ants that had been trampled to death. Dead was dead, not important at all. You dare to ask me for the heaven and earth black yellow order with such a low level? With a frivolous tone, a series of blurry shadows flashed in the air. Chu Hen appeared in front of the middle-aged man in a blink of an eye like a ghost. Looking at the cold eyes of the other party, it was as if he had received the signal of death. Panic filled his entire face. The middle-aged man clenched his fists and hurriedly raised the big scythe in his hand to chop at Chu Hen. Go to hell. The middle-aged man roared angrily. At the same time, the scythe in Chu Hen's hand was also raised high. A powerful wave of energy immediately burst out. The scythe emitted a dazzling light, and a huge phantom of the scythe appeared behind Chu Hen's arm. Bang! The two sharp weapons immediately clashed. At the moment of collision, the big scythe in the middle-aged man's hand broke. The powerful shadow of the scythe slashed down diagonally and pierced through the other party's chest without any resistance. Endless fear filled his eyes in an instant. Blood gushed out of the middle-aged man's chest like a fountain. With a powerless scream of resentment, his body was immediately broken into two pieces. He fell heavily from the sky and was badly mutilated. Unable to withstand a single blow, Chu Hen did not even turn his head. With Yi Yao on his back, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared in the sky above the mountain stream. Whoosh whoosh. Not even half a cup of tea's time after Chu Hen had left, there was another team with a strong aura that flashed over. Looking at the broken corpses scattered everywhere, everyone's expression changed. What a vicious method. All of them were killed in one blow. The one who spoke was a strong man with a heavy sword on his back. Once the heaven and earth mystic yellow order is issued, many people will die. Another person said with a sigh, survival of the fittest. Humans die for wealth, and birds die for food. There's nothing to be pitted about. That person must not have escaped far. Let's chase after him and kill him. Then, the heaven and earth mystic yellow order will be ours. That's right. I heard that the mysterious woman in black has more than one heaven and earth mystic yellow order. It's said that she has appeared in many places before. There are a total of 8 of us. It's enough to get 2 tokens. If there are more, We can sell it to the Chamber of Commerce. Each person can get 1 billion or 800 million. Why not? Yes, let's go. Don't wait for others to seize the opportunity. Let's go. With that, everyone flew up and headed towards the depths of the forest. There were too many monks and too little gruel. There were many forces in the victorious East State, and the number of heaven and earth mystic yellow orders that could be issued was limited. In order to obtain the right to enter the ancient desolate heaven domain, countless people were willing to fight with their lives. More and more people were heading towards the vast mountain forest. Chapter 677. In the deep and gloomy lush forest, a figure wrapped in a loose black robe was walking through the forest at a very fast speed. Behind him, there was a person on his back. Both of them wore black robes that covered their bodies and heads, giving off a mysterious feeling. This person was none other than Chu Hen, who was carrying Yi Yao. At this moment, the first thing Chu Hen had to do was to leave with Yi Yao before those people from Shanghai City found them. Chu Hen did not fly in the air. After all, he was too big of a target in the sky, and he would be discovered by others at a glance. Although there would be some restrictions on the speed of traveling in the jungle close to the ground, it was relatively safer. Whoosh! Suddenly, a burst of cool and refreshing cold wind blew over. It rolled up the dead branches and leaves on the ground, and Chu Hen's wide sleeves lightly swayed. However, Chu Hen slowed down and landed steadily on the ground. The pair of eyes under the black robe appeared calm and indifferent. Chu Hen unhurriedly walked forward, allowing the leaves that were carelessly dancing in the wind to slap on his body. Swoosh! Quickly after, the fallen leaves suddenly became extremely swift and fierce. Like arrows leaving a bow, they explosively shot towards Chu Hen. The seemingly ordinary leaves immediately turned into sharp blades. Several places, such as Chu Hen's left leg and chest, were suddenly cut with long and narrow wounds, and traces of blood flowed out. However, in the face of this sudden attack, Chu Hen's eyes were still as calm as the water in a well, without any ripples. He continued to move forward as if nothing had happened. Buzz, the rhythm generated by the surrounding space, became more and more intense, and the cold wind that came was like a piercing cold current that penetrated deep into the bone. Walala! The leaves from all directions fell down. Tens of thousands of fallen leaves were like a group of startled moths. One after another, they flew towards Chu Hen. They were vast and mighty like a tide. Every single fallen leaf released an incomparably strong, killing intent. And also at this moment, two dense cold glints suddenly exploded out from Chu Hen's pupils. Boom! A majestic and monstrous aura converged within his body as Chu Hen raised his right leg and stomped it heavily. Bang! A terrifying aura that was comparable to a torrent swept out from his body, and a circle of powerful black light ripples spread out and shattered all the falling leaves and flowers that assaulted him. Rumble! Immediately after, a deep crack extended from beneath Chu Hen's feet. Along with a loud bang sound, dust flew everywhere, and rocks flew everywhere. A ghostly figure actually directly scuttled out from the ground. What a cunning little brat. You even noticed me. A sinister smile appeared on a fierce face. This was a short, middle-aged man with an extremely fierce face. He soared into the sky and pounced at Chu Hen like a wild wolf. Whoosh! He reached out with one hand, and on his right arm was a sharp iron claw. The iron claw was abnormally sharp, and there was a barb at the front. Once it clawed a person's body, it would definitely tear off a large piece of flesh. The man's eyes flashed with a ferocious light, and the iron claw quickly reached for Chu Hen's throat. Oomph! Chu Hen sneered, and with lightning speed, he lifted his leg and fiercely kicked the man's chest. Bang! The short man's body shook as if he had been hit by a huge rock, and he immediately retreated. In the next second, Chu Hen's palm moved. A cold light flashed, and a sharp Grim Reaper's scythe appeared in his hand. Chu Hen's arm spread outwards, and his elbow suddenly retracted. Shio! An ear-piercing wind whistled past. The death god scythe was like a dart as it spun and shot out explosively, A powerful, illusory black light lingered around the scythe, and its speed was so fast that it looked like a flowing light dart that had been traveling for thousands of years. The short man's pupils trembled slightly, and a panicked expression appeared on his face. Hiss, accompanied by the sound of clothes being torn, the Grim Reaper scythe actually streaked across the short man's shoulder and then accelerated towards the area behind him. Bang, bang. The towering trees in the area behind him were directly cut down by the scythe, and the moment after the sixth tree was cut down, an incomparably mournful scream echoed in the forest, startling the birds and beasts nearby. Blood splattered, and another cold figure hiding in the back was also sent flying. The blade of the scythe directly pierced through his chest, and the powerful impact dragged him back. Bang! In the end, he was nailed to the trunk of a large tree. That person was nailed to the trunk, and he looked at Chu Hen in front of him in horror. Blood rapidly gushed out, and then his eyes widened, and he tilted his head as he breathed his last. Meanwhile, the short man in front of Chu Hen was quite furious. His eyes were about to pop out, and they were about to spit out flames of anger. "Damn brat, I'm going to tear you into pieces." But as soon as he finished speaking, an extremely powerful sword momentum was instantly released from Chu Hen's body. A solid black sword light appeared out of thin air, and with a swoosh, it shot out swiftly, sweeping up a thick murderous aura as it attacked the short man. The short man's expression changed drastically, and his heart trembled. Hiss! A series of blood splattered, and the sword's shadow flew past. The short man's body fell, and a bloody hole gradually expanded from his throat. Fear filled his entire face, and he looked in horror at Chu Hen, who was shrouded in a black robe. It was only at this moment that he understood how terrifying this mysterious person, whose appearance he did not even see clearly, was. In an instant, he saw through their tricks and easily killed the two of them with a flip of his hand. Chu Hen did not look at the short man, and then walked in front of the first enemy he killed. With a flick of his palm, the death scythe returned to his hand. Of the two of them, one was acting as bait in front, while the other was preparing a killing move at the back. In terms of strategy, it was indeed a pretty good idea. But it was a pity that the person they met was Chu Hen, a man who possessed demon eyes. Even the surrounding energy fluctuations could not escape his eyes. At the same time, this meant that there were more and more people chasing after him, and many of them had strange abilities. He would have to be more careful on the road ahead. In less than 3 days, this vast mountain forest became more and more lively. Undercurrents were turbulent, and a thick aura of danger filled the air. Broken, bloody corpses lay in every corner of the forest, and the smell of blood permeated the air, and even the demonic beasts consciously hid far away. Scenes of death and slaughter continued to play out. Wherever he went, he could see the slaughtered wuxio experts, and there was no lack of powerful figures in the profound world realm. The information about the black-robed man who stole the Earth token became more and more chaotic. Countless people guessed the identity of the other person, but from beginning to end, those who found them all met Yama King, and there was no specific news. However, the victorious East State was huge, and people with strange abilities could be found everywhere. Previously in Shanghai City, many people could use the blurry aura of the black-robed woman to track her. Even if there were corpses everywhere they went, everyone was still fanatical about the heaven and earth black-yellow token. Of course, there were also many people who wanted to take advantage of the situation. After all, the black-robed woman was seriously injured, and the mysterious person who took her away had experienced so many fierce battles, so it was impossible for him to be unscathed. At this moment, perhaps he was an arrow at the end of its flight. It was precisely this kind of groundless speculation that made this forest more and more lively. In the afternoon, there was a light drizzle in the forest. After entering autumn, the light drizzle that blew on the body was a little chilly. Fresh blood flowed on the ground, converging into a winding stream. Trees, flowers, and shrubs were crushed into pieces, and the ground was littered with broken, bloody corpses. In the middle of the pile of corpses, Chu Hen held the death god, scythe, diagonally, his body covered in wounds. In these 3 days, Chu Hen's hands were about to go limp from all the killing, and he couldn't even remember the number of people he had killed. In one bloody battle after another, there was no lack of earth-profound realm experts. Chu Hen used all his strength to fight and kill, and his entire body was already covered with cuts and bruises. Even so, Yao, who was behind him, didn't suffer the slightest injury. After 3 days, Yao still hadn't woken up. Lu Chuanfeng's previous attack was too powerful, and not only did it cause flesh wounds to Yi Yao, it also injured her internal organs. So, even now, Yi Yao's condition was still rather weak. At this moment, Chu Hen clearly felt that Yi Yao's breathing seemed to have quickened, and her heartbeat also sped up. It was as if she had fallen into a nightmare and was nervous. Chu Hen, big brother, where are you? A weak murmur came out of Yi Yao's mouth. She frowned slightly, like a knot that was difficult to untie. Hearing this, Chu Hen's heart suddenly trembled, and an indescribable sorrow and heartache welled up. He replied softly and gently, "I'm here, don't be afraid." Chu Hen, big brother, don't go, big sister doesn't like you. I want you. Silly girl, I'm always here. A faint smile appeared on Chu Hen's face, and he quickly left this war-torn land with her on his back. After a while, Chu Hen found a quiet place. He carefully put Yi Yao down and let her lean against a big tree behind him. Yi Yao's breathing became more and more stable, and the true yuan in her body became more and more stable. This meant that she was about to wake up. Chu Hen gently took off her hat, and his eyes were full of expectation as he looked at her innocent little face. Lil Yao, wake up. Chapter 678. Lil Yao, wake up. Under Chu Hen's gaze that was filled with expectation, Yi Yao's long eyelashes lightly fluttered. Then, her large eyes that carried a trace of drowsiness slowly opened. Lil Yao. Chu Hen was pleasantly surprised. A gratified smile appeared on his face. However, what happened next caused Chu Hen to be caught unprepared. Who are you? Yi Yao's voice was filled with a sense of wariness as she spoke. Her clear eyes were filled with a dense coldness in an instant. She stared at Chu Hen with vigilance and hostility. Chu Hen was instantly stunned. The smile on his face also froze. He said in confusion, "It's me. Lil Yao, I'm Chu Hen. Don't you recognize me?" Chu Hen? Hearing these 2 words, a slight ripple appeared in Yi Yao's eyes. However, it was quickly replaced by indifference. "I don't know any Chu Hen. Stay away from me, don't know. How is that possible? Lil Yao, what's wrong with you? Just now, when you were asleep, you even called my name. I'm not Lil Yao, and I don't know any Chu Hen. I'll say it again. Don't come near me." A cold face and a cold tone. The other party's appearance did not seem to be an act at all. She was like an injured little wolf, looking at Chu Hen with a gaze that was filled with vigilance. Chu Hen was stunned. He was at a loss. Why is this happening? He thought that the first thing Yi Yao did when she woke up would be full of surprise. However, she did not recognize him. Could it be that she injured her brain? Lil Yao, let me check your injuries again. Scram. Along with the ice-cold word, a black and white energy dagger suddenly condensed in the opponent's hand. SSSSS. Chu Hen, who was caught off guard, was directly stabbed by the dagger in his arm. A wound of approximately 10 centimeters subsequently appeared. Don't come near me. The other party held his dagger horizontally in front of him. He was especially guarded against Chu Hen. This kind of ice-cold aura was exactly the same as when he was in Haitian City and Shanghai City. Obviously, it wasn't as simple as losing his memory. Xiao Yao, I won't hurt you. Can you put down the dagger first? Chu Hen tried his best to calm himself down. He couldn't afford to panic at a time like this. It's too dangerous here. I'll take you away first. I'll help you remember the past. However, the other party's eyes were still so cold that Chu Hen felt a chill run down his spine. In the past, every time Yao saw him, she would always smile sweetly. Chu Hen still remembered that when she smiled, her eyes curved like crescent moons. She had never revealed this kind of expression to him. What had happened to her all these years? Why did Yao become so cold? Furthermore, how did her cultivation level rise so quickly? Suddenly, at this moment, An enormous and dangerous aura suddenly whistled in their direction. Swish! Chu Hen's complexion changed. A cyan wind blade that was nearly 100 meters wide slashed down diagonally. It was like a blade of death that came flying from the heavens. It swept up an endless destructive aura as it attacked. Be careful. Without another word, Chu Hen hurriedly grabbed Yi Yao's shoulder and leaped to the side. Rumble. In the next second, the terrifying wind blade directly attacked the place where the two of them were second ago. The earth ruptured, the earth quaked, and the mountains swayed. The monstrous might immediately exploded, creating a huge ravine that traversed the north and south. The incomparably ferocious aftershock instantly shattered the surrounding trees into wood dregs, and the disorderly flying tiny wind blades even sliced off a thick layer of the soil on the ground. Bang, bang. Together with Yi Yao, Chu Hen was sent flying. Most of the impact landed on Chu Hen's body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Yi Yao's injury that had yet to fully recover was torn open again by the impact. The intense pain caused her face to turn as white as a sheet of paper, and even her lips had lost their color. Little Yao. Chu Hen hurriedly moved forward to check on her condition, but Yi Yao blocked his way with a dagger. Don't come any closer. Immediately after, a cold and sinister young figure suddenly appeared in the sky. His indifferent eyes were filled with a thick sense of mockery. Hell, what a surprise. I didn't expect the person who attacked me to be you. So the people of Mount Kunliu also like to do shady things. After fleeing for so long, Lu Chuanfeng had finally found his way here. Yi Yao's willowy eyebrows were knitted together. Her eyes were filled with seriousness as she stared at Lu Chuanfeng in the sky. In her eyes, the two people in front of her were both enemies. An icy glint flashed in Chu Hen's eyes as he coldly replied, "Shady things? I'm afraid you're no better than me. You ambushed me once in Shanghai City, and now I've returned the favor. We're even now." Lu Chuanfeng lightly raised his chin and said with a disdainful expression, "To be honest, I'm really surprised. Today, apart from getting back our own Earth Order, I've also gained something else." With the intelligence of the Northern Qin Chamber of Commerce, they obviously already knew that Chu Hen had killed the man from the Fong clan at the wind-soaring origin and obtained one of the Heaven and Earth Yellow Orders. In other words, as long as he killed Chu Hen, Lu Chuanfeng could at least take away 2 Heaven and Earth Yellow Orders. This was indeed a pleasant surprise. What are your last words? You can say them now. Lu Chuanfeng looked at the two people as if he was looking at a dead man. Then, a layer of illusory green light floated around his body. With him as the center, the space within a radius of a few miles began to vibrate violently. However, there was no fear on Chu Hen's face. Then, with a wave of his hand, nearly 1,000 upper-grade primordial crystal stones flew out from his hand and scattered around Yi Yao. Buzz! In the next moment, surging Reiki energy spread out from Chu Hen's Naiwan Palace. Chu Hen's hands made a series of hand signs. In an instant, hundreds of runes that were as beautiful as spirit butterflies scattered and melted into the air. Then, with Yi Yao as the center, a 5-meter-wide, beautiful rune array floated on the ground. "Earth Gang Ward," Chu Hen shouted. The beautiful rune array immediately shone brightly, and the upper-grade primordial crystal stones released a steady stream of spiritual energy. Buzz! A layer of solid golden semicircular light curtain appeared, forming a protective light shield that covered Yi Yao. Yi Yao clenched her fists as a ripple appeared in her indifferent eyes. It was obvious that Chu Hen was protecting her. Once an intense battle broke out between him and Lu Chuanfeng, the powerful aftershocks will be enough to take the life of the injured Yi Yao. You still have the mind to care about others at a time like this. What a good man. Ha ha! A mocking smile spread out. Lu Chuanfeng's eyes turned cold, and the surrounding air trembled a bit. A sharp wind blade that was more than 10 meters wide shot down, striking towards Chu Hen with a shocking momentum. "How dare a fool like you attack me? I, Lu Chuanfeng, will take your life." Whoosh! Chu Hen's pupils slightly shrank. He faced the incoming wind blade head-on, and soared into the sky. His body was covered in black light as he punched out with the force of 1,000 caddies. Boom! The ear-piercing explosion was like the crisscrossing of lightning. The power of Chu Hen's fist directly shattered the peerlessly imposing wind blade. Immediately after, the sound of rushing wind rang out beside his ear. From the corner of his eyes, he saw a blurry afterimage flash by as a dangerous aura assaulted him from behind. Your strength is not bad, but your speed is a complete mess. What? Chu Hen suddenly turned his head around. Lu Chuanfeng, who was still high up in the sky a second ago, was now right in front of him. What a fast speed! This was the limit of the wind attribute Xian body bloodline. Bang! Lu Chuanfeng's palm landed solidly on Chu Hen's chest. A terrifying force assaulted him like a tsunami. The careless Chu Hen felt as if he had been hit by a mountain and was immediately sent flying. Traces of blood flowed out of his mouth. She didn't know why. But when she saw Chu Hen, who was heavily injured by Lu Chuanfeng, the depths of Yi Yao's heart involuntarily tightened. It was as if her untouchable heartstrings were being lightly plucked by invisible fingers. A trace of confusion surged out from Yi Yao's eyes. Chapter 679. The wind attribute Xian body bloodline limit was not only extremely destructive, but also extremely fast. Bang! The moment Chu Hen smashed the incoming wind blade, Lu Chuanfeng immediately flashed over and hit Chu Hen's chest with a solid palm. An especially terrifying power came pouring over with the momentum of toppling the mountains and overturning the seas. Chu Hen only felt the blood and qi in his body surge up, and together with the blood that gushed out, his body was thrown backward rapidly. Bang, bang, bang. Chu Hen was like a sandbag, smashing through several tens of meters tall trees in a row. Wood chips splashed, branches and leaves flew everywhere, and the overbearing impact caused the airflow between heaven and earth to become extremely chaotic. Hey, you can't even withstand a single blow. A hint of disdain appeared in Lu Chuanfeng's eyes. He put his palms together, and a condensed green light pattern quickly gathered in the center of his palms. A mere rank 9 void piercing realm dares to compete with me. Good luck, I won't see you off. Buzz. An extremely restless energy came from between Lu Chuanfeng's palms. He opened his palms, and an incomparably powerful murderous aura spread out and rose. Whoosh! Accompanied by the sound of rushing wind, a seemingly solid wind blade shot out, and with the momentum of a meteor chasing the moon, it slashed towards Chu Hen at a high speed. Extreme wind cut. The swift and fierce wind blade dragged out a vigorous wave of air. As it moved, the width of the wind blade rapidly increased, and in an instant, it reached a width of hundreds of meters. A surging cyclone surged up on both sides, and the ground cracked layer by layer, and a deep ravine was cut out by the aura. The distance between the two of them quickly shortened. Chu Hen's pupils faintly shrunk. Following that, his gaze turned cold. He clenched his fists, and a magnificent golden light pattern blossomed from his body. Buzz! A golden, fiery cloud, spirit pattern immediately appeared between his eyebrows, and a pair of golden light wings, emitting a holy aura, unfolded from his back. Heavenly Spirit Curse Seal. Boom! Almost at the same time, the extremely astonishing wind blade struck in front of Chu Hen's body like a graceful swan. The incomparably heavy, true essence collided. The momentum was deafening. Intense turbulence shot up into the sky. Tens of thousands of tiny blue lights intertwined with chaotic golden light patterns, tearing through space and sweeping out in all directions. Hee, it seems I've grown stronger. Lu Chuanfeng let out a frivolous and weird laugh. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Hen, whose entire body was flickering with bright golden lines and a dense black light, was like a demon god as he directly rushed out from the chaotic area where the energies were mixing. The pair of golden wings behind him overflowed with light and were extremely dazzling. On Chu Hen's face, there were also many beautiful spiritual tattoos that appeared. He looked divine, but also revealed traces of bewitchment. Don't be too full of yourself, idiot. The multicolored power merged and gathered in front of him. Chu-Hen's body shone brightly. The dazzling divine light was like a sun from the ninth heaven, and the world couldn't help but lose its color. Heavenly spirit strike. Buzz. The space shook violently. As soon as he said that, a peerless golden light beam suddenly burst out from between Chu-Hen's palms. The condensed light beam emitted a strong destructive aura, crossing the sky, showing the complete power of the heavenly cave. Bang! The extremely powerful attack hit Lu Chuanfeng's body, and the latter was directly blown away. The horrifying shockwave of the attack went all the way down, like a flood, like a giant dragon. The vast and lush forest was directly blasted through. Rocks piled up, and airwaves rose. Boom! The earth shook and the mountains shook. The light beam, along with Lu Chuanfeng, smashed into a mountain and made a huge hole in the mountain. Bang! Immediately after, Lu Chuanfeng crawled out from the rubble. His sinister face was filled with a ferocious smile. Hee, that's more like it. Now you are qualified to make me get serious. Hee hee. His opponent was like a ferocious barbarian beast. The stronger the opponent he met, the more excited he seemed. One couldn't let their guard down when fighting against this kind of person. Swoosh! Dozens of sharp wind blades came at him one after another, and Lu Chuanfeng followed closely behind. His speed was as fast as lightning. Chu-Hen's eyes turned cold, and the Yuan Dan in his body rotated rapidly. The mighty true inner force spread out like a tide, and along with the restless sound of sizzling, dozens of strong, dark lightning power burst out of his body and rushed forward. Clang! The fierce lightning was like a dancing dragon, and it smashed the dozens of wind blades flying toward him. Then, Chu-Hen's eyes turned cold, and he raised his right palm, clenched his 5 fingers, and the majestic power of the heavenly palm set off a shocking rhythm between heaven and earth. In an instant, the dozens of black lightning quickly intertwined with each other and immediately merged into a huge lightning beam with a diameter of dozens of meters. Wind and thunder overlapped, and the sky changed color, like the loud cry of thousands of thunderbirds. The huge lightning beam exploded with a terrifying destructive power that could destroy everything. However, in the face of such a domineering attack, Lu Chuanfeng's face showed a frivolous and contemptuous smile. Buzz, buzz! A strong green light wrapped around his right arm, and in an instant his entire arm glowed with a green light. A layer of illusory light was released, and it turned into a long and narrow sharp blade. Boom! The sound of the lightning being cut was deafening, and even the sky was shaking. Lu Chuanfeng used his arm, which had turned into a sharp wind blade, to forcefully cut the black lightning bolt into 2. He could even cut the lightning? Seeing the scene in front of him, Chu-Hen could not help but frown as a serious expression emerged on his face. This person was much more powerful than he had imagined. Is that all you've got? Lu Chuanfeng laughed coldly. His body flashed, and his right hand blade tore through the air, leaving a trail of shadows behind, and pierced towards Chu-Hen's heart. Chu-Hen dodged sideways, and the green hand blade brushed past his chest. The sharp air blade immediately left a 20-centimeter wide wound on Chu-Hen's chest. But immediately after, Lu Chuanfeng's left palm exploded with a powerful palm force and seized the opportunity to attack. Chu-Hen quickly reached out with one hand and grasped his opponent's wrist like an iron pincer. Lu Chuanfeng's palm strike missed, and it caused waves of ripples in the air. However, before Chu-Hen could come up with a countermeasure, Lu Chuanfeng's left palm released a strong green light. A strong sense of danger surged, and a long and narrow green blade, like the fang of a giant beast, grew out of his palm and pierced towards Chu-Hen's throat. Chu-Hen dodged, and the sharp green fang blade almost brushed past his neck. If he had been one step slower, his throat would have been pierced. Even so, the strong air blade still cut a little of the skin on his neck, and a thin red line spilled out. Chu-Hen was secretly shocked. His opponent's body seemed to be full of wind blades, and it was really hard to defend against. Be it close combat or long-range attacks, it was quite difficult. Bang! Chu Hen didn't dare to be careless, and he quickly struck out with his palm and retreated with the help of the recoil. Trying to run? Humph, too bad it's too late. Lu Chuanfeng's eyes slanted, and he took advantage of the situation to launch a fierce attack on Chu Hen, leaving a blurry afterimage in the air. The wind attribute bloodline limit power had an extreme advantage in speed. Moreover, Lu Chuanfeng's cultivation was almost comparable to an expert at the third level of the Earth Profound Realm, and he was firmly suppressing Chu Hen, who was only at the peak of the 9th level of the Void Piercing Realm. If it weren't for Chu Hen's bloodline limit being strong enough, he would have long been tortured to death. Even so, the situation that Chu Hen was currently facing was rather thorny. While Chu Hen was defending, he secretly thought of a countermeasure. Bang! Boom! The fierce battle between the two was earth-shattering, and the surroundings were shaking. The powerful, true energies collided with each other, shaking the heavens and the earth. One after another, gorgeous light patterns and chaotic green wind blades burst out wantonly, filling the sky and covering the earth. Every fierce collision caused sparks to fly, and spiritual patterns to fly everywhere. These days, Chu Hen had almost never stopped to rest, and he had experienced one bloody battle after another. Under a series of factors, Chu Hen was gradually suppressed by his opponent. Under Lu Chuanfeng's almost suppressive and fierce attacks, Chu Hen's body was continuously covered with wounds that were dripping with blood. Who was he? Why was there an indescribable sense of familiarity? Violent energy collisions swept in all directions, and the Earth-Star border boundary barrier was continuously hit by the powerful aftershocks. The solid golden semicircular light barrier was hit again and again, twisting and shaking like ripples on the surface of water. Inside the barrier, Yi Yao's eyes were a little blank. Looking at the young man who was covered with cuts and bruises under Lu Chuanfeng's tight attack, she felt a little sorry for him. Why is this happening? What a strange feeling, Yi Yao murmured. He said his name is Chu Hen. My name is Yi Yao. Who is Chu Hen? Who is Yi Yao? My head hurts. Yi Yao's body couldn't help but tremble. Her face was as pale as a piece of paper. She held her head with both hands, feeling a splitting headache. Boom! In the sky, a vast wave of light spread out in all directions. The two of them had collided head-on. Lu Chuanfeng had been pushed back a dozen meters, while Chu Hen had been pushed back several hundred meters. Hee, it's time to show you what I'm capable of. Buzz! Lu Chuanfeng spread his arms, and a powerful force surged out from his body. The next moment, the space within a few miles started to distort. Boundless majesty surged towards Chu Hen. Chapter 680. It's time for me to show you what I can do. Boom! A tremendous force immediately spread out from Lu Chuanfeng's body, causing the space within a radius of a few miles to vibrate. Green lights appeared in the sky, and a cyclone began to spin. Streams of sharp wind blades appeared out of nowhere in the sky. An endless amount of pressure rushed toward Chu Hen. A sky full of green light fluttered and danced around Chu Hen's surroundings. Tens of thousands of wind blades were coming from all directions, emitting an extremely powerful aura. There were no blind spots in such a concentrated attack. Chu Hen was like a target, and what was waiting for him would be thousands of arrows piercing through his heart. It's over. Chaotic wind cut, destroy. Lu Chuanfeng pinched his fingers together, and in the next second, all the wind blades in the air shot toward Chu Hen at a high speed. Like flying arrows shooting across the universe, the air was torn apart, and the air was pierced through. One after another condensed and thick air waves appeared in the air. The densely packed wind blades were like a flock of moths. They brought up the power of annihilation and chopped towards Chu Hen. There was no room for him to dodge. Chu Hen, who was in the center of the area, had nowhere to hide. However, he didn't plan to dodge. Facing the wave of attacks, Chu Hen narrowed his eyes, and a shocking sword aura burst out from his body. Buzz! Immediately after that, Chu Hen's body spun at a high speed, stirring up the power of the heaven and earth like a tornado. Xiao Xiao. Countless solidified black sword images separated from Chu Hen's body and flew out from all directions. The countless sword auras were like 10,000 swords returning to their origin. They gave rise to a strong force of impact as they met the wind blades that filled the sky. The sky was dimmed, and the earth was spinning. The sword rain fell, and the sky was shining brightly. All of a sudden, the entire world was filled with an unparalleled murderous aura. The wind was raging, and the shadows were intertwining. Streaks of sharp wind blades immediately clashed intensely with the piercingly cold sword gleam. Boom. Bang. Sparks flew everywhere, and a rain of light flew. A series of heavy explosions continuously erupted in the sky. The pressure formed by the wind blades was immediately restrained. The peerlessly powerful tens of thousands of sword glows were like the divine radiance that was emitted from the nine heavens' divine Sunday. Wherever they went, they shattered the green-colored wind blades that were approaching menacingly. Between the heavens and the earth, there were bursts of intersecting thunderstorms. Circles of air waves rippled in the sky, even though there were thousands of wind blades and there were no gaps in their attacks. Chu Hen's defense was still as solid as an iron bucket, without any openings. Seeing this, Lu Chuanfeng's eyes turned cold and his face was filled with disbelief. His throat moved up and down as he coldly spat out a few words as he stared at the sharp figure that was showing off his abilities. It's the one-sword flying immortal technique. Shock was written all over his face. One had to know that the one-sword flying immortal technique of Mount Kunliu was a famous and powerful technique in the victorious East State. Countless people yearned to learn it. However, the world also knew that in the last few hundred years, there was only one person in the entire Mount Kunliu who had mastered the one-sword flying immortal technique. That person was Sect Master Gong Yangyu, and now, after Gong Yangyu, the one-sword flying immortal technique had reappeared. How could people not be shocked? Who was this person? Why had they never heard of his name before? Amidst his shock, Lu Chuanfeng's eyes revealed a cold, murderous intent. No matter who his opponent was, anyone who could master the one-sword flying immortal technique was definitely not an ordinary person. Leaving this person alive might not be a problem in the future. Boom! At this moment, a giant sword light that was 100 meters wide charged toward Lu Chuanfeng with a shocking aura. Everywhere it passed, the space trembled. Lu Chuanfeng frowned and revealed a look of disdain. He stretched out his palm, and the joyous wind blade spun rapidly in his palm, forming a spiraling cross-shaped dart. Without another word, he held the densely packed cross-shaped dart and faced the giant sword shadow head-on. Bang! An earth-shattering noise, as intense as the collision of mountains, exploded in the sky. The giant sword shadow was like a collapsing stone pillar, breaking inch by inch and collapsing layer by layer, exploding into a mighty shockwave. However, the moment Lu Chuanfeng blocked the attack, an aurora suddenly flew toward him. Today, I'll call you surprise instead of fright. A frivolous and cold voice pierced through the ears like thunder. Lu Chuanfeng's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly raised his head, only to see Chu Hen charging right above his head. Buzz! Chu Hen's aura surged, and a purple light burst forth from his cold eyes. A blinding white light flashed, and an imposing Grim Reaper scythe appeared in Chu Hen's hand. The Grim Reaper scythe swallowed and spat out mottled patterns of light. Endless murderous intent poured down, and a giant shadow of the scythe appeared behind Chu Hen's arm. Kneel! With a roar, the enraged Chu Hen swung the scythe with both hands and directly chopped at Lu Chuanfeng's head. Boom! The space shook violently, and a heavy sound exploded between heaven and earth. A towering green light burst out from Lu Chuanfeng's body, and an extremely strong force was transmitted into Chu Hen's body. His arms trembled violently, and even the scythe in his hand was sent flying. What? Chu Hen's pupils turned slightly cold. He saw a 3-meter-tall cyan shadow floating around Lu Chuanfeng's body. This shadow took the shape of a human and enveloped Lu Chuanfeng within it. Like a strange protective layer of defense, then, he saw that Lu Chuanfeng's body was overflowing with colorful lights, and a dazzling green armor was faintly discernible on his body. Saint armor. Chu Hen frowned, and a cold look appeared on his face. You should be proud of yourself for forcing me to use my mysterious azure saint armor. Lu Chuanfeng's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He moved his palm and threw out the spiral cross flying dagger. Kaboom! In the next instant, along with a terrifying destructive aura, the spiral cross flying dagger rapidly expanded. Like a star that was about to explode, Chu Hen's face changed. Then, he quickly gathered Reiki energy with his left hand and True Yuan with his right. Two completely different kinds of energy rose and converged at Chu Hen's left and right sides. Buzz! Chu Hen clasped his hands together, and a strange Tai Chi array appeared in front of Chu Hen. The Tai Chi array was facing the front, like a defensive shield. What is that? Yi Yao, who was in the ground starboard barrier, was slightly moved. Her eyes were filled with surprise. All of a sudden, the domineering True Yuan energy and the beautiful Reiki energy merged and moved at the same speed. Soul and martial arts combined attack. Chu Hen gave a loud roar. His palms moved like a willow. An extremely berserk energy fluctuation surged out and collided with the extremely inflated cross-shaped flying dagger head-on. Bang! It was earth-shattering, and the sky was shaking. The two violent energies were like two meteorites that had unexpectedly encountered each other. As soon as they collided, space instantly fell into a warp, and the screen of light that shot into the sky was like an enormous mushroom cloud that soared into the sky and almost pierced through the sky. A powerful and terrifying energy shockwave swept across the sky, sweeping in all directions. Chu Hen and Lu Chuanfeng were both blown away by this torrent of energy. Crack! The cyan shadow around Lu Chuanfeng's body shook violently. Long and narrow cracks appeared on its surface. Lu Chuanfeng's eyes turned cold. He was shocked by the power that Chu Hen had just unleashed. It was so powerful that it could break through his saint armor. I can't let him live. I can't let him live. Lu Chuanfeng was even more determined to kill Chen Fan. Chu Hen was not in a good condition either. The huge energy wave shook his internal organs, and he spat out a mouthful of blood again. The mighty energy spread across the sky, flattening the forest and destroying the mountains. The mountains and rivers were filled up, and the waterfalls flowed backward. Meanwhile, the ground starboarder enchantment that protected Yi Yao was also twisting. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared on it. There was a possibility that it would collapse at any moment. Hey! Suddenly, a fierce light flashed in Lu Chuanfeng's eyes. A cold look flashed between his eyebrows. Then, he waved his hand, and a sharp wind blade flew towards Yi Yao. I'll take care of you first. What? Chu Hen turned pale with fright. Without saying a word, he turned into a silver light beam and shot down. Hiss! The powerful wind blade tore through the air. It was like a 1,000-year aurora, full of killing intent. Yi Yao's pupils trembled. She was so badly injured that she didn't even have the ability to dodge. At this critical moment, a young figure suddenly appeared in front of her and helped her to withstand the violent waves of the stormy waves. A familiar face flashed across Yi Yao's mind in an instant as she stared at the figure before her. Her beautiful eyes widened as she clenched her jade-like hands tightly, before she subconsciously cried out. Chapter 681. Brother Chu Hen dodge. Almost in an instant, a familiar face suddenly flashed in Yi Yao's mind. Looking at the young figure who resolutely stood in front of her, she subconsciously exclaimed loudly. A voice that was slightly ethereal was transmitted into Chu Hen's ears, and it was like a stone had been thrown into a calm pool of water, causing circle after circle of ripples to arise. Chu Hen's pupils slightly dilated, and a hint of pleasant surprise could be faintly seen. Immediately afterward, the 4 dots in the depths of the bewitching purple pupil fluctuated violently. 2 purple beams of light burst out from it, directly hitting the powerful wind blade that was coming diagonally. Boom! Two brilliant rays of light, one green and one purple, firmly intersected with each other and directly exploded less than 2 meters in front of Chu Hen's body. The fierce force was like two mountains colliding and exploding. The space was distorted, and the chaotic light and shadow bloomed like misty rain. The brutal impact caused the ground to quickly sink, and deep cracks rapidly extended out. The incomparably fierce air waves spread in all directions. The layer of earth aura barrier that enveloped Yi Yao was like a deformed bubble, and then it burst with a bang. The crystal fragments that filled the sky dissipated wantonly. However, in front of Yi Yao, the figure that was not tall seemed to be a boulder and did not move even half a step. Countless broken air rays and wind blades splashed on Chu Hen's body, and wounds of different depths were all over his body. Traces of blood burst out, and even his face was scratched with a few bloodstains. Chu Hen, brother Chu Hen. Yi Yao's eyes were wide open, and her delicate body was trembling. The corner of Chu Hen's mouth raised slightly. He looked sideways slightly, and a touch of relief surged between his eyebrows. He said softly, "Silly girl, you finally remember me, Chu?" Ugh! Yi Yao's pupils shrank faintly. She knelt on the ground with one hand supporting the ground and the other covering her head. The intense pain was almost splitting her head. So, it's a pair of little lovers. Yeah, this reunion scene is really touching. A light and scornful laugh came from the sky. Lu Chuanfeng's body shone with a green light, as if he had the power to overturn rivers and seas. In this case, I'll be a good person and send you two on your way. Buzz, as soon as his voice fell, an unprecedentedly strong power spread out from Lu Chuanfeng's body. In an instant, the sky and the earth were swept up by a hurricane, and the clouds in the sky surged. The area within a radius of 100 meters immediately fell into a state of violent distortion. Countless green light shadows suddenly appeared, and with a monstrous momentum, Chu Hen and Yi Yao, a green light curtain actually rose from all directions. The hurricane roared, and the airwaves tore. The green light screen was actually made up of countless wind blades intertwining to form a wall of wind. The wall of wind was extremely dense, and its destructive power was extremely strong. Wherever it went, the ground would split open, and the dust, sand, fallen leaves, and dried branches would immediately be ground in a fine powder the moment they came into contact with the wall of wind. Looking at the two trapped in the wind wall, Lu Chuanfeng's face showed a ferocious and vicious smile. He raised his arms proudly and said, "I named this move Meteor, Killing Wind. You two should be proud to die to this move of mine." Rumble. Along with the deafening sound of rolling thunder, the four wind walls immediately merged together in the sky, completely sealing off Chu Hen and Yi Yao's escape route. It looked like the two of them were trapped in a giant inverted bowl. Suddenly, the space inside the giant wind wall fell into a state of distortion. Millions of wind blades almost tore the inner area into powder. Chu Hen's eyes narrowed, and coldness surged from between his eyebrows. This was Lu Chuanfeng's real goal. The reason why he attacked Yao just now was to use this move. The wind blades that covered the wind wall were violently agitated, and an endless destructive aura swept over like a flood. Yi Yao was sweating all over, and she had a splitting headache. She shouted weakly, "Chu Hen, don't worry about me." You go. In the next moment, the space inside the wind wall caved in layer by layer. Tens of thousands of wind blades left the wind wall, and like tens of thousands of arrows, they attacked the two recklessly. Meteor killing wind, destroy. Lu Chuanfeng pressed his palms down and clenched his fingers together. A tremendous power of the heavenly palm burst out, and along with that cold smile, the huge upside-down bowl-shaped wind wall instantly turned into a space of death. Everything within it would be crushed into powder. Die! Lu Chuanfeng roared with a ferocious voice. Suddenly, a shockingly powerful sword aura rose from the inside. The mighty divine aura was like a volcano that was about to erupt, and within it, Thousands of brilliant sword rays were flashing. Then, with an earth-shattering bang, 100-meter-long black sword ray pierced through the impregnable wall of wind, forcibly creating a 10-meter-wide hole. Buzz! Then, the powerful black sword ray continued to slash at Lu Chuanfeng, who was in the sky, without losing its momentum. The one-sword flying celestial art was indeed powerful. It could even break through the ultimate killer move that he was so proud of. Lu Chuanfeng's eyes turned cold, and his murderous intent intensified. He stretched out his palm and punched at the incoming sword ray. Break it! The incomparably ferocious palm force came crashing down like a monstrous wave from the Milky Way. Boom! A heavy explosion sounded, and the sword light was directly crushed. Light patterns splashed in all directions, and chi waves filled the sky. However, in the next moment, a green figure flew out from within the shattered black light patterns. The bright and beautiful figure was like a glimpse in the vast universe, and it was so fast that it looked like an aurora flying through the sky. What? Lu Chuanfeng's pupils shrank, and his expression changed drastically. Hiss! In the next moment, the green figure broke through the defense of Lu Chuanfeng's sacred armor, pierced through his chest, and flew out from his back. The figure's speed slowed down, and it turned out to be a dark green sacred sword. It was crystal clear and sparkling, as if it was forged from the essence of the rainbow after the rain. Lu Chuanfeng's eyes widened. He looked down at the bloody hole in his chest, and his face was filled with disbelief. The blue ran sword, the blue ran sword, the treasure of Mount Kunliu, and a token that only the sect master could hold. The one-sword flying celestial art was even more powerful when used with the blue ran sword. How is this possible? You're the new sect master of Mount Kunliu? Lu Chuanfeng was terrified. Through the huge hole in the wind wall, a pair of demonic purple eyes shone with divine power. Chu Hen replied coldly, "You can ask Hades." Boom! Lu Chuanfeng received the strong signal of death. Without any hesitation, he covered the wound on his chest with one hand, turned around, and left. Just as Lu Chuanfeng was about to retreat, 10,000 rays of starlight surged out from Chu Hen's body with an overflowing aura. The bright light runes were like a dazzling sun and stars. Buzz, buzz! Extremely violent energy waves quickly gathered in his palms, along with waves of restless spatial ripples. Chu Hen's palms slowly separated, and a crescent-shaped silver shuttle rapidly took shape. Circles of flowing ripples circled up and down, creating layers of water ripple-like airwaves. The fourth level of the seven-star scripture, a trace of coldness and ruthlessness appeared in Chu Hen's eyes. When the shuttle in his palms was half a meter wide, he raised his hands. Whoosh! The sound of air tearing rang out as the shuttle shot out, dragging an incomparably vigorous air wave behind it. Migres' shuttle, chasing sun and moon. A thunderous momentum stacked up, making one's blood boil. The terrifying and majestic momentum met it head-on, blossoming with a dazzling holy radiance. The magnificent flying shuttle was like the shadow of the crescent moon, chasing after Lu Chuanfeng at an extremely fast speed. The latter was extremely shocked, and his pupils, which had shrunk to the size of a needle point, were filled with a strong fear. Hiss! An incomparably sharp and ear-piercing sound rang out, like a sharp blade cutting through the wind. Blood splattered, and red rain rained down. The crescent moon shuttle directly pierced through Lu Chuanfeng's abdomen. Chapter 682. Migres' shuttle, chasing sun and moon. Hiss! The bright and swift crescent moon was like a divine radiance that pierced through the sky, directly striking Lu Chuanfeng's body like a sharp blade. A scarlet rain of blood rained down from the sky. The entire world seemed to slow down. Lu Chuanfeng's pupils, which were filled with endless horror, shrank into two dots. He watched helplessly as his body was cut into two, split into two. His eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. A sudden and intense pain spread throughout his entire body. An incomparably panicked and miserable shriek reverberated between heaven and earth. Then, with a loud bang, like the eruption of a volcano, the giant bowl-shaped wind wall that enveloped Chu Hen and Lu Chuanfeng exploded from the inside out. A vast and terrifying power spread out in all directions. Mountains crumbled and the earth cracked. Tens of thousands of light patterns and wind blades shot out in all directions like a swarm of frightened locusts. Deep, narrow, and sharp grooves appeared on the ground. The world spun, and the light was blinding. The two halves of Lu Chuanfeng's body heavily fell to the ground. His swollen, blood-red face was filled with intense resentment. Then his head tilted to one side, his eyes wide open as he died with everlasting regret. At the same time, Chu Hen, who was in the middle of the cyclone, also staggered. With a punk sound, he knelt down on one knee. He was panting heavily. His handsome face was so pale that not a trace of blood could be seen on it. His entire body was covered with wounds of varying depths and bloodstains. At this moment, Chu Hen felt as if he could no longer muster the slightest bit of strength. In the past 3 days, he had experienced over a dozen bloody battles. Chu Hen was both mentally and physically exhausted. Swoosh! The blue Ran sword drew an arc of light in the sky, then flew back to Chu Hen's side and floated in front of him. The sparkling and translucent green holy sword looked as if it was made of the purest crystal. It didn't contain any impurities, and it was bright and dazzling. "Thank goodness I have you," Chu Hen softly murmured. The blue Ran sword, the sword of the sect master of Mount Kunliu. A strange light faintly flashed in Chu Hen's eyes. This was the first time he had used this holy sword, but its power had exceeded Chu Hen's expectations. However, after these few days of intense battles, he also understood that it was best to break through to the Earth's profound realm as soon as possible. With the cultivation of the void-piercing realm, confronting the Earth's profound realm was really too much of a disadvantage. Buzz, a faint ripple appeared in the air, and Chu Hen casually put away the blue Ran sword. Soon after, he slowly stood up. The pain from the wounds on his body caused him to involuntarily suck in a breath of cold air. It must be said that this battle was truly difficult. Chu Hen turned around to look at Yi Yao behind him. Due to the strength of the shock wave just now, coupled with Yi Yao's heavy injuries, she could not bear it and fainted once again. Looking at her pale face, Chu Hen slightly clenched his fists, and a trace of heartache appeared between his brows. Then, he carefully helped Yi Yao up and carried her on his back, preparing to leave. However, before leaving, Chu Hen first went to Lu Chuanfeng's corpse. The two halves of the corpse looked extremely miserable and terrifying, but in Chu Hen's eyes, the other party was more like a joke. Then, with a flick of his palm, Lu Chuanfeng's storage ring left his fingers and fell into Chu Hen's hand. Lu Chuanfeng was the highest enforcer of the Northern Qian Chamber of Commerce's branch in Shanghai City. Naturally, his status was extremely high. Did he have the Heaven and Earth Black-Yellow Order? Then, Chu Hen sneaked his divine sense into the ring to investigate, but the result was negative. Lu Chuanfeng did not have the Heaven and Earth Black-Yellow Order on him. Of course, this was not out of Chu Hen's expectations. The Northern Qian Chamber of Commerce was quite powerful in the victorious East State. Usually, the headquarters would give the orders for these branches to carry out major events, so the Heaven and Earth Black-Yellow Order they had should be in the headquarters when it was time for an auction. They would transfer it from the headquarters. That way, it would be safer. There was no Heaven and Earth Black-Yellow Order, but there were many other treasures in Lu Chuanfeng's storage ring. There were armor, holy items, secret martial arts, and some extremely precious treasures. If these things were to be auctioned, their total value would at least be comparable to 2 or 3 Heaven and Earth Black-Yellow Orders. If it's all mine. A frivolous smile appeared at the corner of Chu Hen's mouth, and he put the ring into his pocket without hesitation. Then, Chu Hen did not stay any longer. He moved, carried Yi Yao on his back, and disappeared into the deep forest once again. Not long after Chu Hen left, a few blurry figures rapidly approached from afar. "We're here. The battle is already over. Looks like we're late again." The battle this time seems to be more intense than any of the previous ones. Looking at the chaotic ruins in front of them, everyone's faces were filled with caution and shock. There were huge craters on the ground, as well as various long and narrow ravines. It could be imagined that the battle that had just occurred covered a very large area. Look, one of them noticed something and pointed at a place 100 meters in front of them and exclaimed. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They saw a broken corpse lying on the ground over there. Without another word, they immediately went forward to check it out. However, when they saw the corpse's appearance, everyone's heart felt like it had been struck by a hammer. It was as if a bolt of lightning had exploded in their heads, and their faces immediately turned pale. What? This is Lu Chuanfeng. Everyone's faces turned pale with fright. They looked at each other and saw the shock in their companion's eyes. Hiss! Everyone took a deep breath and felt chills run down their spines. Even Lu Chuanfeng had been killed. Shock. Absolute shock. Everyone subconsciously scanned their surroundings, their eyes filled with deep fear. They had seen bloody corpses in the forest over the past few days and saw many martial cultivators who had been slaughtered until not a single part of their bodies remained unscathed. However, even if all of those people were added up, the shock brought about by the person in front of them was far from enough. Who did it? Was it the woman in black's accomplice? Who was he? Questions arose in everyone's mind. Looking at Lu Chuanfeng's undying face, everyone felt a chill enveloping them. What should we do? Should we chase after him? Someone asked. Chase your mother. Do you think you can compare to Lu Chuanfeng? Someone cursed. The other person shook his head in confusion. What if that person escaped with serious injuries? You know, that's a what if. Those who were killed these days all thought the same. Anyway, I'm not going to chase after him. It's 2F** King scary. I'll try my luck elsewhere. That's right. At least there's hope if you stay alive. If it could be said that the reason why everyone had chased after Chu Hen with all their might was because they wanted to fish in troubled waters and be the Oriole, then Lu Chuanfeng's fate had undoubtedly given them a wake-up call. Who was Lu Chuanfeng? It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the #1 expert among the younger generation in Shanghai City. He was at the 3rd level of the Earth Profound realm, which was enough to frighten countless people. But now he was killed here and died without a complete corpse. Anyone would be afraid of such a situation. Although it was said that humans die in pursuit of wealth and birds die in pursuit of food, most of them were built on the basis that they could see hope. At least there was a certain probability of success. But if they knew that they would fail, it would be stupid to go to their deaths after weighing the pros and cons. Everyone chose to retreat. Let's go. Forget about this place. I didn't expect so many powerful and mysterious people to show up. Looks like we need to be more careful in the future. Immediately, everyone turned around and left. They didn't linger. Chapter 683. In the next few days, the originally chaotic jungle gradually calmed down. Many of the Wuxiu's teams that were chasing after Chu Hen and Yao also left the area one after another. The news of Lu Chuanfeng's death had already spread to Shanghai City. Unsurprisingly, it caused a huge uproar in the entire city, creating a huge wave. For a moment, everyone was guessing who had killed Lu Chuanfeng. What was the relationship between that person and the mysterious man in black? The battle for the heaven and earth mystic yellow token continued to ferment. Wave after wave of turmoil rose and fell in the victorious East State. In the depths of the mountain forest, there was no sign of human habitation. Thick fog floated in the air, and the valleys were deep and long. In a hidden cave, "Little Yao, what's wrong? I'm Brother Chu Hen." "Ah, my head hurts, my head hurts." Yao held her head in pain. Her entire body trembled as she struggled in Chu Hen's arms. Chu Hen, who did not know what to do, could only hug her to prevent her from crashing into the stone wall and injuring herself. Although Yao was trying her best to control her pain, her pale face and sweaty forehead were enough to show how much pain she was suffering. She looked at Chu Hen, her eyes filled with coldness from time to time. "Who are you? Stay away from me." "Brother Chu Hen, why are you here?" "Get lost, or I'll kill you." Looking at her painful expression, which was sometimes clear and sometimes confused, Chu Hen felt like a knife was being twisted in his heart. Then, Chu Hen held on to Yi Yao's shoulder and said in a low voice, "Little Yao, look into my eyes." Buzz! In the next moment, a demonic purple light appeared in Chu Hen's eyes. The 4 dots in the depths of his eyes released extremely strong energy waves. A formless aura surged towards Yi Yao. The latter's gaze immediately became blank and wooden. Her expression also became a little lifeless. She instantly calmed down and powerlessly fell into Chu Hen's embrace. Sigh. Chu Hen let out a long sigh. He frowned, and his eyes were filled with helplessness. Under such circumstances, he could only use the power of his demon eye to trap her in an illusion to reduce her pain. Chu Hen gently helped Yi Yao to lie on a stone bed that was shoveled out with sword energy. He also laid a blanket under it. At this moment, Chu Hen was very confused. He crouched down beside the stone bed and looked at Yi Yao, who had fallen into an illusion. Once again, he used the power of his demonic eyes to investigate the condition of her body. Buzz! A faint ripple of light appeared in the air. Chu Hen's visual space immediately became strangely distorted. In the next moment, the flow of true essence in Yi Yao's major meridians appeared in front of Chu Hen's eyes like a 3-dimensional map. He saw that the true essence in Yi Yao's body was flowing very fast and was much more active and restless than a normal person. Under such circumstances, it meant that the speed of her cultivation was faster than that of an ordinary person. But why was this happening? Chu Hen was unable to find the specific reason. In addition to the rapid flow of true essence, Chu Hen also found that there were traces of dark light patterns on Yi Yao's head. These light patterns were distributed in the major meridian areas of the head, like a very irregular spider web, involving every nerve. Could this be the reason why Yi Yao was not awake? The corner of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed. Then, the purple light in his pupils gradually faded. His pitch-black eyes were full of depth and heaviness. When he was not clear about the situation, Chu Hen did not dare to act rashly. If he were to accidentally injure Yi Yao, that would be too late even if he regretted it. "Do you know what's going on?" Chu Hen's lips moved slightly as he asked in a low voice. Then, a strange and obscure fluctuation came from his body. The person Chu Hen was asking was none other than the sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow. "What? You don't usually look for me, but now that you've encountered something you can't solve, you think of me?" The sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow said lightly. Chu Hen's brows were slightly cold, and he looked a little angry. Then, the sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow said lazily, "She has been poisoned by a kind of consciousness control poison." Poison? Consciousness control? Upon hearing these 2 words, Chu Hen's brows furrowed even deeper. He suppressed the restlessness in his heart and asked in a low voice, "Can you cure it? Is it good for me? What do you want?" So straightforward. Cut the crap. Are you going to help me or not? Well, the sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow seemed to be considering. Then, it changed the topic and said indifferently, "Looks like you don't need my help." What did she mean? Just as Chu Hen was about to ask again, there were a few hurried sounds coming from outside the cave. Chu Hen was slightly shocked. He quietly circulated the quintessential essence in his body, but very quickly, his nervous emotions immediately relaxed. "Chu Hen, it's us." Haozi's voice was the first to be heard. Then 3 figures flashed in from outside. They were Haozi, Nongqi, and Hua Shui. "I finally found you. Senior sister Nongqi's tracking ability is really amazing." Hua Shui hurriedly jumped over and said with a smile, "How did you end up like this? Did you suffer so many injuries? Are you all right? Let me take a look." Seeing Chu Hen in such a state, the 3 of them could not help but jump in fright. They saw that Chu Hen's body was covered in wounds, and he looked battered and exhausted. Chu Hen did not have the time to answer the other party's question. He directly dragged Hua Shui to Yi Yao's side. "Quick, you came at the right time. Help me take a look at her." The 3 of them were stunned again. Only then did they realize that there was a young girl lying on the stone bed behind them. "Miss Yi Yao? It's really her?" Haozi subconsciously exclaimed. In an instant, the gazes that the three people looked at Chu Hen with were filled with even more disbelief. If that was the case, the person who saved the mysterious black-clothed man in Shanghai City was undoubtedly Chu Hen. Then the person who caused the massacre in the forest these days was also. You killed Lu Chuanfeng? Nongqi asked in disbelief. We'll talk about this later. Chu Hen's mind was completely focused on Yi Yao. He had no time to care about anything else. Hua Shui was stunned. Then, she bent over and knelt by the stone bed to examine Yi Yao. What's wrong with her? Did you cast an illusion spell on her? Yes. Chu Hen nodded. He immediately told Hua Shui about the changes that happened to Yi Yao these days in detail. Haozi and Nongqi were shocked after listening to him. Hua Shui frowned slightly and said, remove her illusion spell first. But after removing it, her emotions are very unstable. It's okay. With the illusion spell on her, it will affect my judgment. Hua Shui said. After hesitating for a while, Chu Hen finally waved his hand and a soft purple light flew out. The purple light went directly between Yi Yao's eyebrows. Then, a circle of light ripples appeared on Yi Yao's body. Once the illusion spell was removed, her dull eyes were filled with intense pain. However, at this moment, Hua Shui raised her hand and a silver needle appeared in her palm. Chi! The silver needle pierced into an acupoint behind the back of Yi Yao's ear. Yi Yao, who had just woken up, closed her eyes and fell asleep again. Chu Hen clenched his fists and took 2 steps forward. Don't worry, I just let her sleep, Hua Shui explained. Then she said, you guys wait outside. It's not convenient for you 2 men to stay here. Senior Nongqi, you can stay here and help me. At this moment, Hua Shui's expression was not as silly as usual. Instead, she was very focused and serious. Seeing that she was so cautious, Chu Hen's heart was slightly relieved. All right, we'll wait outside the cave. Call me if anything happens. Don't worry, I'll try my best, Hua Shui said solemnly. After that, Nongqi and Hua Shui stayed inside, while Chu Hen and Haozi walked outside. The deep and gloomy valley was like a long dragon crawling in front of him. The sky outside had already reached dusk and was gradually darkening. Chu Hen's mood was like the hazy sky, slightly gloomy. Don't worry, Miss Yi Yao doesn't look like someone who will die young. She'll definitely be fine. Haozi smiled brightly and patted Chu Hen's shoulder. Chu Hen nodded and took a deep breath. He said, how did you find this place? Dan Zhen asked us to come here. He guessed that you were probably chasing after the man in black. But I didn't expect that she was Miss Yi Yao. I didn't expect that either. A bitter smile appeared on Chu Hen's lips. If he told this to the Yi family of the Sacred Star Dynasty, they wouldn't believe it. In the past, Yi Yao wouldn't even deliberately hurt an ant. She was kind, and most of the time, she was thinking of others who would associate her with the ruthless man in black who had killed dozens of people in Shanghai City. But now that it had come to this, the truth was right in front of them. No amount of excuses would be useless. How's the situation in Shanghai City? Has the heaven and earth yellow token been auctioned? Chu Hen asked. What do you think? Haozi smiled speechlessly. Shanghai City can be said to be in a complete mess. The Northern Qin Chamber of Commerce postponed the auction of the second heaven and earth yellow token by 2 months, 3 days ago. Chu Hen was stunned. It seemed that Lu Chuanfeng's death was a big blow to the Northern Qin Chamber of Commerce. This was understandable. After all, the first Earth token had not been recovered and the law enforcement officer had died outside. How could the Northern Qin Chamber of Commerce be in the mood to hold another auction? 2 days ago, we evacuated from Shanghai City. Dan Zhen and the others went to Deer Chasing City to continue their search for the Heaven and Earth Black Yellow token. The 3 of us came to find you. Later, we'll meet up in Deer Chasing City. Chu Hen nodded his head. It couldn't be any better if they split up like this. As for Dan Zhen's team execution ability, Chu Hen was still very trustworthy. Chapter 684. As the sun set in the west, night fell, and the forest and the mountains became lively at night. Birds and beasts began to hunt for food, and the roars of the beasts in the depths of the mountains formed a lively symphony. The sky was dotted with stars, and a bright moon hung high in the sky. Silver frost sprinkled down, making the valley look like a scene out of a painting. Chu-Hen and Haozi stood guard outside the cave. Perhaps it was because they had waited for too long, but the two of them chatted a lot. They talked about people and things from the past, from Mu Feng to Long Qingyang to Long Xuanshuang. Haozi asked about the people he cared about in the past. When he heard that Mu Feng's Heavenly Sword Pavilion had undergone a huge change, Haozi could not help but feel sorry for it. But at the same time, Haozi was also in awe of Chu-Hen's various feats in the 100 Nations province. I wonder if Big Brother has left the General League, Chu-Hen muttered to himself. Back in the Sacred Star Empire, Long Qingyang had told him about his plans. Once the situation in the Sacred Star Empire stabilized, Long Qingyang would leave and travel the world. To be honest, Long Qingyang's talent wasn't inferior to Chu-Hen's, and the latter's bloodline had been upgraded to a profound body. If he had a fortuitous encounter in the outside world, who knew if Long Qingyang would bring him a pleasant surprise in the future? As for his second sister, Long Xuanshuang, whom he had not seen for a few years, she was actually the most talented. How was she doing in the Xian'ai sect? Chu-Hen's heart faintly surged with a trace of worry. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, it was already late at night. A bright light shone out from the cave. It had been almost 6 hours since Hua Xue had been inside, and Chu-Hen was a little anxious at this moment. Light footsteps sounded from inside. Nongqi walked to the entrance of the cave and said, "You can go in now." Chu-Hen's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly turned around and walked in. Haozi and Nongqi followed behind him. "How is it?" Chu-Hen returned to the cave and saw Hua Xue sitting on the ground panting. Her little face was sweaty and looked exhausted. There was a medicine box on the ground, and all kinds of bottles, jars, and silver needles were scattered on the ground. "I'm exhausted." Hua Xue let out a deep sigh of relief. "Thank you for your hard work." Looking at Yao, who was lying on the stone bed, breathing evenly, and whose face had regained some color, Chu-Hen said to Hua Xue with some gratitude, "Is she all right?" "Far from it." Hua Xue's expression became much more serious. She stared at Chu-Hen and said in a serious tone, "Her situation is very special." Hearing this, Chu-Hen's heart, which had just relaxed a little, became anxious again. He frowned and said, "What's going on?" "There's a poison called soul-detaching powder in her body. This poison can erase her memory, split her personality, and turn her into a puppet controlled by someone else. To put it simply, someone used the soul-detaching powder to control her consciousness. That's why she doesn't remember you. And if she forcefully tries to remember the past, the poison of the soul-detaching powder will corrode her brain and cause unbearable pain." Soul-detaching powder? An extremely cold light surged in Chu-Hen's eyes. What Hua Xue had said was similar to what the sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow had said. They both said that Yi Yao had been poisoned by a poison that controlled her consciousness. But after hearing Hua Xue's detailed explanation, Chu-Hen's heart could not help but burn with anger. Who was so vicious? How could they do this to such a weak girl? "Can you cure the poison of the soul-detaching powder?" Chu-Hen asked in a low voice. "I can, but what?" Hua Xue pursed her red lips and looked at Nongqi as if asking for her opinion. Nongqi shook her head helplessly and said, "Tell me the truth." Hearing this, Chu-Hen immediately had an even worse premonition. Hua Xue nodded and continued, "Other than the soul-detaching powder, there's another extremely impure energy in her body. This energy comes from an external source called the Heaven Damnation Pill. The Heaven Damnation Pill can't be considered a poison, but it's even more terrifying than poison." "What?" Chu-Hen's pupils shrank. He clenched his fists and said, "What's that?" "A pill that can infinitely stimulate the power of a person's bloodline." "Stimulate the power of a person's bloodline?" "That's right." Hua Xue gave her affirmation. However, the solemnness on her face became even denser. The effect of this medicinal pill is extremely mysterious. It can allow one to take a great shortcut on the path of cultivation. However, it has a fatal flaw. The heavenly calamity pill causes one to become addicted and extremely dependent. Once one begins to consume it, one cannot stop. One must consume it again after a certain period of time. The heaven damnation pill. After listening to Hua Shui's words, Chu Hen's frown deepened. He suddenly understood why Yi Yao's cultivation base had risen so rapidly in just a few short years. The heaven damnation pill could infinitely stimulate the potential of a person's bloodline. It was equivalent to the bloodline's limit being enhanced and strengthened every time it was taken. Based on its medicinal effect alone, the heaven damnation pill was definitely a treasure. However, its flaws couldn't be ignored. What happens if I stop taking it? Chu Hen asked the question in his heart. If I stop taking it, the power of the bloodline's limit will rapidly weaken and all major meridians will suffer irreversible damage. In a less serious case, I'll lose my cultivation base and become a cripple. In a more serious case, I'll lose my life and die from the exhaustion of my heart. Hua Shui spoke very seriously. She was not joking at all. A huge wave suddenly rose in Chu Hen's heart. An extremely cold, murderous intent spread from his body. At that moment, Chu Hen only wanted to find the person who harmed Yi Yao and tear him into pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. The few of them were shocked by Chu Hen's expression. Haozi went forward to comfort him and said, "Don't panic. There will definitely be a solution." He then looked back at Hua Shui and said, "Is there a way to remove the poison of the soul separation powder and the side effects of the heaven damnation pill?" "I can remove the soul separation powder, but the heaven damnation pill, I can't do anything about it," Hua Shui said to Chu Hen apologetically. "Do you know how to refine the heaven damnation pill?" Haozi continued to ask. If there was really no way to remove the side effects of the heaven damnation pill, then there was only one way. He could only use this pill to support Yi Yao. Although he could only live on the heaven damnation pill for the rest of his life, it was at least better than becoming a cripple or losing his life. However, Hua Shui still shook her head helplessly. The heaven damnation pill hasn't appeared in the Eastern Victory Prefecture for decades. Very few people know how to refine it. What should he do? His last escape route had been cut off. Could it be that he could only let Yi Yao wait for death? However, a chilling intent surged within Chu Hen's eyes. He deeply exhaled a breath of air and did his best to calm his emotions down. "Let's remove the poison of the soul separation powder first." His icy tone sent chills down everyone's spine. The few of them understood Chu Hen's feelings and did not say anything else. "I will return to Shanghai City first. I still need a few rare medicinal ingredients to refine the soul separation powder. I don't have them here," Hua Shui said. "Which ones?" Chu Hen asked. "Thousand Buddha lotus, centipede flower, and earth marrow crystal." These medicinal ingredients were extremely rare and precious. After all, the soul separation powder was also an extremely special item. It was not an easy task to remove it. Chu Hen lifted his eyelids slightly and said in a low voice, "See if there's anything you want here." Chapter 685. Take a look and see if there's anything you want in here. Wow. Chu Hen waved his hand, and a ray of white light flashed past. In front of their eyes, a dazzling array of items instantly appeared. There were martial arts, battle skills, holy artifacts, and also many heavenly and earthly treasures that shone brightly. "What's this?" Haozi, Nongqi, and Hua Shui were stunned. They looked at Chu Hen in astonishment. "I stole them from Lu Chuanfeng and his men," Chu Hen said plainly. Their expressions were a little strange. At the same time, it confirmed their previous guess that Lu Chuanfeng was killed by Chu Hen. Hua Shui immediately crouched down and began to search through the pile of items. "They're all treasures. The Northern Qin commerce is so rich. This is the flame essence, heaven rain stone, colorful core liquid." Hua Shui searched through them one by one. Her big eyes were filled with surprise. Many of them were precious materials that she had only seen in medical books before. After a while, Hua Shui found a golden lotus the size of a palm. There were 7 seeds on the golden lotus, and it looked like the lotus seat in Buddhism. Then she found a flower with a strange appearance. The leaves of this herb were long and narrow like a sickle. Both sides of the herb were covered with tiny thorns that were very sharp. I found 1,000 Buddha lotus and the centipede flower. Hua Shui said with surprise. You still need the earth marrow crystal? Nongqi asked. What does the earth marrow crystal look like? I'll go find, Chu Hen said in a deep voice. No need. Hua Shui shook her head and grabbed a colorful spiritual stone. There was a colorful liquid flowing in the spiritual stone as if the essence of the rainbow was gathered. We can use this colorful core liquid to replace the earth marrow crystal. The effect will be better. Their eyes lit up. Hua Shui continued. I'll start preparing to refine the antidote for the soul-separating powder. However, in order to prevent the soul-separating powder from acting up in her body, we have to give her a medicinal bath first. Chu Hen nodded slightly. I understand. The sky had just brightened, and the hazy halo of light shrouded the vast mountains and forests in a holy glow. In a valley deep within the mountain range, the valley was quiet and secluded, and the surroundings were lush with vegetation. Layer upon layer of clouds were like an enormous canopy that blotted out the sky and enveloped the heavens and the earth. Chu Hen and the others were quite lucky. They found a natural hot spring in the valley. The hot spring was not big, only about 3 meters wide. However, it was perfect to use as a bucket for a medicinal bath. The hot spring was surrounded by tall shrubs and flowers, forming a tight garden barrier. With Yao on his back, Chu Hen and Haozi were playing chess by the pool. Hua Shui, on the other hand, took out dozens of bottles and jars of various sizes and continuously poured all sorts of spiritual liquids and powders into the spring water. The color of the pool kept changing from dark green to light red, and from light red to sky blue. In the end, the entire pool of water turned deep purple. A dense mist floated on the surface of the water like an enchanting dancer, revealing traces of strangeness. You guys go out. Senior sister Nongqi can stay. Hua Shui looked back at Chu Hen and Haozi. The medicinal bath needed to undress Yi Yao, and it was inconvenient for the two men to be by her side. Chu Hen nodded and immediately put Yi Yao down from his back and handed her over to Nongqi. How long will it take? Chu Hen asked. I have the Akiji sacred cauldron. At most, I will be able to refine the antidote within 2 days. Don't worry, Hua Shui answered. Thank you. Chu Hen frowned with a hint of gloom. He glanced at the sleeping Yi Yao gently, and then walked out of the garden with Haozi. After Chu Hen and Haozi left, under Hua Shui's instruction, Nongqi took off Yi Yao's clothes and changed her into a thin muslin dress. Put her in the pool. Okay. Nongqi carefully put Yi Yao into the medicinal pool. Everything below her neck was submerged in the water. The powerful medicinal effect automatically melted into Yi Yao's body. She had an obvious reaction, and her willowy eyebrows could not help but frown. Senior sister Nongqi, stay by her side and watch over her. Once there's any major reaction, carry her out immediately. Hua Shui instructed with a serious expression. I understand. Nongqi also answered solemnly. Immediately, Hua Shui walked to another empty area, took out the Akiji sacred cauldron, and began to prepare to refine the antidote. Returning to the outside, Chu Hen raised his head and looked at the bright sky. Under the radiance of the sun, the fog that shrouded the mountain peak gradually dissipated and dispersed. It is necessary to set up a blinding glyph array. Haozi said. Chu Hen nodded to show his agreement. After all, the danger had not been completely eliminated. He believed that there were still a small number of people looking for the whereabouts of Chu Hen and Yi Yao. Moreover, this place was located in the depths of the mountain range. There were many demonic beasts. It was hard to guarantee that a few huge fellows would not come out to cause trouble. Immediately, with the help of Haozi, Chu Hen distributed tens of thousands of high-grade primordial crystals in the surrounding area. For Yi Yao, Chu Hen would definitely not be stingy. He set up the strongest blinding glyph array that he knew, the water curtain array. Buzz buzz. Not long after, the glyph array was activated. With the hot spring garden as the center, the space within a radius of a few hundred meters actually sank into a strange distortion, as if it was in an illusion. Immediately after, the space actually caved in, and a torrent of water surged up, instantly forming a natural lake. Meanwhile, Chu Hen, Haozi, as well as Hua Shui and the rest who were inside the garden, all disappeared between heaven and earth. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary lake, ordinary and unremarkable. Is this an Earth-level glyph array? Haozi looked at the distorted space around him with some surprise, and asked in surprise. Chu Hen smiled. It's still a little lacking, but it's not worse than an Earth-level glyph array. The water curtain array was a pure blinding and concealing glyph array. It had no defensive ability, nor did it have any offensive ability. Those who were inside, it would become invisible. Not only could it confuse the vision of others, but it could also eliminate their aura, unless they encountered someone whose cultivation far surpassed that of Chu Hen. Even if they stood opposite it, they would not be able to sense anything special about this place. Time slowly passed by. Chu Hen and Haozi guarded outside without leaving even an inch. From time to time, there would be a faint energy fluctuation coming from the garden, and they could also smell a rich herbal fragrance. Of course, the fragrance here would not float outside the glyph array. After the two chatted for a while, Haozi sat cross-legged on the ground and began to meditate. It would be faster to kill time this way. However, Chu Hen was not in the mood to do so. He stared blankly at a certain spot and secretly asked the sacred winged heavenly flame bird, "Can you cure the side effects of the heavenly dusk pill?" Along with the obscure aura fluctuations coming from its body, a light and frivolous voice sounded. "If I was at my peak, there would still be some hope. But I'm sorry to tell you now, I can't help you." When he heard this answer, Chu Hen was not particularly surprised. Otherwise, Hua Shui and Nongqi would not have been so serious when talking about the heavenly dusk pill. However, the heavenly dusk pill is not unsolvable. What? The sacred winged heavenly flame bird's sudden words immediately made Chu Hen's mind light up. He raised his eyelids and said in a low voice, "What method is there?" This method sounds simple, but it's not so easy to implement. Chu Hen clenched his fists slightly, his heart in his throat. The sacred winged heavenly flame bird paused, then said clearly, "It is to let the bloodline boundary complete a great evolution." Evolution? Chapter 686. Once the bloodline boundary had completed its evolution, the power of the bloodline boundary would be able to suppress the side effects of the Heaven Doom pill. After listening to the sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow's explanation, Chu Hen couldn't help but narrow his eyes. His face instantly became solemn. Based on Chu Hen's understanding of the Yi family, Yi Yao's constitution was most likely a new type of bloodline boundary that had mutated. Moreover, from the powerful strength she had displayed in Haitian City and Shanghai City, it could be clearly determined that this was an extremely special type of mystic body. If she were to complete her evolution, she would have to break through to a saint body. How difficult would that be? Just thinking about it made one frown. Is there only one way? Chu Hen asked again. As far as I know, there's only one way. The Heaven Doom pill is both a divine medicine and a poison for a mystic body, but in front of a saint body, it doesn't have any effect at all. Once the constitution evolves, the impurities in the bloodline will automatically disintegrate and no longer have any negative effects on her. The sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow paused for a moment before continuing. However, there are many people in this world who can't hold on until that day. Reality was cruel. The Heaven Doom pill could greatly reduce the speed at which one's cultivation increased and could limitlessly stimulate the potential of the bloodline boundary. But with this kind of shortcut, one would have to rely on this pill forever to survive. This was a huge price to pay. If one wanted to break free from the Heaven Doom pill's control, they could only evolve to a saint body. But for ordinary people, reaching that step was easier said than done. After listening to this, Chu Hen's heart gradually calmed down. He let out a deep breath and stared at the ground in front of him with eyes that flashed with determination. No matter what, I have to save her. If Yao hadn't left the Sacred Star dynasty back then, this wouldn't have happened. From Chu Hen's point of view, the reason why Yi Yao had become like this today could be said to be directly caused by him. Apart from personal feelings, there was also an unshakable sense of responsibility. No matter what, Chu Hen wouldn't give up on Yi Yao. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed quietly. For Chu Hen, these 2 days were exceptionally difficult. During this period of time, everything was peaceful, apart from a few ordinary little beasts that accidentally broke into the illusion. There were no other incidents. The antidote is ready. When it was close to noon, Nongqi's soft call caused Chu Hen and Haozi to bounce up from the ground. The two of them hurriedly entered the garden. The first thing that came into view was the Akiji cauldron that was emitting a faint residual heat. The obscure heat wave floated into the air and formed a gust of hot wind that blew toward his face. On a blue stone next to the pool, Yi Yao, who had changed into a clean set of clothes, lay quietly on it. Hua Shui and Nongqi were kneeling on both sides. The deep purple medicinal pool had already returned to its normal color, but it was clearly much more turbid than before. It was the residue left behind in the medicinal liquid. How is it? Chu Hen walked forward nervously. I've given her the antidote just now. If nothing goes wrong, she'll wake up soon. Hua Shui lifted her eyes and looked at Chu Hen. Hua Shui's face looked pale and weak after 2 sleepless days of refining the antidote. Chu Hen looked at her gratefully. Thank you. Hua Shui blinked her big eyes and smiled mischievously. You don't have to be so courteous to me. If you really want to thank me, just give me the few kinds of medicinal herbs that you snatched from Lu Chuanfeng. Chu Hen couldn't help but find it funny. This girl really knew how to climb up the pole. All right, I'll give you all those medicinal herbs. Is that okay? All right. Hua Shui shook her head and looked as if she had gotten a bargain. Since you're so courteous, then I'll reluctantly accept it. After taking the antidote, strands of gentle golden halo appeared in Yi Yao's body. The light that faded into the chiffon was like a layer of dense spiritual fog, adhering to Yi Yao's body and gathering at the center of her brows at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, everyone could clearly feel that Yi Yao's breathing had become steadier. What was even more surprising was that strands of gray light rose and expelled from her body like gossamer. It looked like a demon that was being driven away. It really worked. Chu Hen's eyes brightened. Then, Yi Yao's eyebrows slightly furrowed. Her lightly closed eyes slowly opened, and her clear gaze turned from sleepy to bright. Xiao Yao, Chu Hen called softly. Brother, Chu Hen? Yi Yao's pupils dilated slightly and were filled with disbelief. Silly girl, you're finally not muddle-headed. Chu Hen laughed heartily. His eyes were filled with gentleness and pity like an elder brother. Haozi also smiled warmly. Miss Yi Yao, you're finally awake. You're that senior Haozi? Haha, I'm honored that Miss Yi Yao didn't forget me. You guys? How? Yi Yao couldn't react for a while. Her pure and lively face was filled with deep confusion and bewilderment. Where am I? Why are you guys here? What happened? At this moment, Yi Yao was like an ignorant child who couldn't even tell north from south. But soon, the memories from before surged into her mind like a tidal wave. Thinking of the splitting headache, Yi Yao subconsciously held her head. What's wrong? Chu Hen looked nervous. Don't worry. She just hasn't gotten used to being awake yet. She'll be fine in a while. Hua Shui explained. Yi Yao's mind fell into an unusual chaos. It was as if there were interweaving lightning bolts. Everything that happened before and after she lost her memory was awakened. Her delicate body trembled like a lonely goose in the wind and snow. I've killed a lot of people. I've let them down. Big brother Chu Hen, I almost killed you too. I didn't mean it. Big brother Chu Hen, I'm sorry. Yi Yao's voice trembled. Her face was filled with pain and guilt. Chu Hen felt sorry for her. He held her shoulders gently and said softly in her ear, I know you didn't mean it. Brother, Chu Hen doesn't blame you. Don't be afraid, Xiao Yao. I'm here. I'll bring you back. Haozi sighed helplessly. Then, Hua Shui and Play Chess retreated for a while, leaving Chu Hen to comfort Yi Yao alone. Looking at Yi Yao, who was curled up in his arms, and blaming herself, Chu Hen knew that the innocent and kind Xiao Yao from before had returned. He comforted her softly. None of this is your fault. We all know that it wasn't your doing. Don't blame yourself. It has nothing to do with you. Slowly, Yao's emotions calmed down. She slowly lifted Chu Hen's left sleeve. There was a scab wound on his arm. When Chu Hen was inspecting the other party's injuries, Yao had scratched him. Does it still hurt? Yao asked with tears in her eyes. Chu Hen smiled and shook his head. It hurt a little in the beginning, but it doesn't hurt anymore. Why don't you beat me up? I'll let you vent your anger, Yao said weakly. Chu Hen was instantly amused by her. He lightly scratched Yao's small nose and said, "Your body hasn't recovered yet. If I beat you up, then my hard work over the past few days would have been in vain. Then I'll owe you for now. When Big Brother Chu Hen is unhappy, you can beat me back." Chu Hen smiled and shook his head. What a naive girl. Then, Chu Hen let out a deep breath. A hint of hesitation flashed in his eyes. After hesitating for a while, his expression became much more serious. "Xiao Yao, can you tell me how you came to the Eastern Victory State after you left the Sacred Star Dynasty? Also, who was the person who fed you the Heavenly Adversity Pill and Soul Separation Powder?" The most crucial questions followed. Chapter 687. How did you come to the Eastern Victory State after you left the Sacred Star Empire? Also, who was the person who fed you the Heavenly Adversity Pill and the Soul Separating Powder? After calming Yao down and seeing that she had returned to normal, Chu Hen began to ask the most important questions. Under the solemn gazes of the few people, Yao pursed her red lips and tightly held onto Chu Hen's palm. Her knuckles turned slightly white. Seeing that she didn't seem to want to talk about the past, Chu Hen retracted his hand and gently patted her shoulder. "I was too impatient. Why don't you take a rest first? We'll talk about this later." Yao shook her head and looked at Chu Hen with ripples in her eyes. "Brother Chu Hen, it's all my fault. I couldn't find you no matter how hard I tried. In the end, I was tricked by the bad guys." Yao immediately began to talk about the unknown events that had happened back then. That year, Chu Hen had completely fallen out with the Sacred Star Empire's imperial family and caused a storm in the city. After being chased out of the city by the imperial family, Chu Hen had fled to the Hidden Wind region. Meanwhile, Yao, who was concerned about Chu Hen, had hurriedly left the imperial city. However, because she didn't have a clear goal and didn't know where Chu Hen had fled to, she could only aimlessly search for Chu Hen's whereabouts. Later on, I left the Sacred Star Empire and went to the border of the Tianluo Empire. In the end, I encountered two very powerful demonic beasts. In a moment of desperation, the boundary of my bloodline erupted. Yao pursed her lips and said softly, "Is it because of the mutated bloodline boundary in your body?" Chu Hen asked in a deep voice. "Yes." Yao nodded. She also knew that the ancestral line of the Yi family had always been at the boundary of the battle physique bloodline. However, her physique had reached the level of the profound physique. This was naturally a bloodline mutation. After I killed those two demonic beasts, a strange old man appeared out of nowhere. He looked at me and said, "Yin Yang profound physique." Yin Yang profound physique? The corners of Chu Hen's eyes slightly narrowed, and a faint chill surged from between his brows. After that, the old man started to talk to Yao, intentionally or unintentionally, and asked for a lot of information about her. In the beginning, Yao was naturally on guard, but after all, this was her first time traveling far away from home. On top of that, she was innocent and young. It didn't take long for the old man to dig out her basic background and information, as well as the purpose of her trip. Afterwards, the old man continued to lie and said that he knew the whereabouts of Chu Hen. He even said that he could bring her to him. The naive Yi Yao was dubious about this, but because she was too worried about Chu Hen, it was easy for people to make mistakes when they were anxious. After weighing the pros and cons, she still chose to believe the old man and hoped that she could find Chu Hen through him. By the time Yao realized that she had been deceived, she was already far away from the Sacred Star Empire. Yao wanted to escape, but it was too late. Afterwards, she was controlled by the old man and forcefully brought out of the 100-nation state into the victorious East state. Who was that person? Where did he bring you? A murderous intent flashed in Chu Hen's eyes. Yao shook her head lightly. I've never seen that person again. He brought me to a place guarded by many experts and locked me in a small, dark room all day long. Only after a few days did someone let me out. Then, one of them said that once I entered their Innocence Valley, I'd never be able to get out. What? Innocence Valley? Upon hearing this name, Hua Shui and Nongqi's expressions changed. The two of them looked at each other. Nongqi frowned and said coldly, "This matter is really related to the Innocence Valley. I didn't expect them to do such heinous things again. However, upon hearing this, Chu Hen frowned and said, What do you know? Nongqi replied in a low voice, The first place in the victorious East State to spread the Heaven Azura pill was the Innocence Valley. However, later on, they said that they would not release this kind of pill again. Decades have passed, and indeed, the Heaven Azura pill has not appeared in this region. That's why we weren't sure if this matter was related to the Innocence Valley that day. That's why we wanted to wait for Miss Yi Yao to wake up to tell you the truth personally." Then, Hua Shui looked at Yi Yao and asked, "Are they trying to seize your bloodline boundary?" Yi Yao looked at her in surprise. "How did you know?" "Umph, looks like they really can't change their ways." Hua Shui clenched her small fists and cursed hatefully. From this, it seemed that Hua Shui and Nongqi knew a lot about the Innocence Valley. "Tell me more about this Innocence Valley." Chu Hen's eyes were filled with coldness as he tried to suppress the anger in his heart. The Innocence Valley had a dark history in the past. However, it was cleared up later on, so no one said anything about them anymore. Hua Shui said, "Oh, the people of the Innocence Valley have a special bloodline boundary called the wedding dress mystic body. This bloodline itself does not increase one's strength too much. However, its most special feature is that it can seize another person's bloodline boundary and make it yours. This is called grafting. Think about it. When you work so hard to perfect your bloodline boundary to the most perfect form, it's taken away by someone else. Isn't that the same as making a wedding dress for someone else?" When Hua Shui said this, she was so angry that her teeth were itching. This girl was young, but she had a very strong sense of justice. Her silly look was very cute. However, no one could laugh at this moment, especially Chu Hen. Back then, in order to expand their power, the Innocence Valley once searched for Wu Xiu, who had a strong bloodline boundary. They controlled him and seized his bloodline boundary. Take the Innocence Valley Master, for example. He obtained the illusory Sky bloodline boundary, which was known as the strongest mystic body. Illusory Sky bloodline boundary. Even Housie couldn't help but look shocked. I heard Master say that the Illusory Sky bloodline boundary is a powerful bloodline boundary that combines illusions and martial arts. It can be said to be ever-changing and difficult to distinguish between real and fake. When perfected to the extreme, the power of the Illusory Sky bloodline can rival that of a sacred body. Indeed, it's precisely because of this Illusory Sky bloodline that the Innocence Valley Master was able to rule over an area and become stronger day by day. Nongqi affirmed and continued to explain, but it was also because Innocence Valley's method of seizing other people's bloodline boundary was so vicious that they were opposed by all the first-rate sections. In order to avoid public anger, Innocence Valley restrained themselves and announced that they would never do something like seizing other people's bloodline boundary again. Slowly, this matter died down. Then why did they use the soul-detaching powder to control Miss Yi Yao's consciousness? Housie asked in a low voice. Because the wedding dress profound physique can only be completed under the condition that the other party is willing. If the other party isn't willing, it'll easily form resistance and cause both sides to suffer. Moreover, once the person is poisoned by the soul detachment powder, they'll listen to all their orders without hesitation, including telling them to go and die. Then what happens to the victim after grafting? Under normal circumstances, they'll become an ordinary person. Their cultivation and bloodline boundary will be lost. The few of them couldn't help but look at Yi Yao. Her cultivation was still there, and her bloodline boundary was still there. This meant that her power hadn't been stolen yet. However, this didn't mean that the situation was any better. On the other hand, Hua Shui and Nongqi were a little worried. Because other than the soul-detaching powder, Yao also had the power of the heaven damnation pill. The soul-detaching powder was used to control her consciousness, but the heaven damnation pill was used to infinitely stimulate the power of her yin-yang profound body bloodline boundary. The reason why her power hadn't been taken away yet was because the person controlling her wanted to perfect the yin-yang profound body to its peak and stimulate it to its strongest state. Then, they would snatch it away and reap a huge harvest. Back then, Innocence Valley used the heaven damnation pill to cultivate a group of extremely powerful death warriors. Among them, the ones with the strongest bodies had their bloodline boundary taken away, and the rest were fed with the heaven damnation pill and the soul-detaching powder to continuously strengthen their power, turning them into killing tools. Nongqi said with some disgust. Could it be that Miss Yi Yao can only escape the control of the heaven damnation pill if she loses her bloodline boundary? Haozi asked with a frown. Hua Shui shook her head, and her expression became even more serious. When I said under normal circumstances, I meant people who haven't taken the heaven damnation pill. Once they take the heaven damnation pill, even if the bloodline boundary is taken away, the poison produced by the heaven damnation pill will still remain in her body. She still needs the heaven damnation pill to maintain her life. What? Everyone's expression changed. Bang! Chu Hen was even more furious. He struck down with his palm, and the ground immediately sunk in deeply. Countless densely packed, deep cracks quickly spread out on the ground. Chapter 688. Bastard! Bang! The enraged Chu Hen slammed his palm on the ground. The road immediately caved in, and deep cracks extended outwards. After listening to what Hua Shui and Nongqi said, the killing intent that accumulated in his heart was really hard to control. Using the soul separation powder to control a person's consciousness, then using the heaven adversity pill to maximize the potential of the person's bloodline, and then using the substitution technique to steal the person's energy. In the end, the victims still had to bear the huge side effects of the heaven adversity pill. They took all the benefits, and the victim had to bear all the pain. Anger. Absolute anger. Right now, Chu Hen only wanted to sneak into Wuong Valley and tear the bastard controlling Yi Yao into pieces. Brother Chu Hen, don't be angry. Am I not fine now? Yi Yao gently tugged on Chu Hen's clothes and shook her head, appeasing his anger. Even in a time like this, she was still thinking of others. Hua Shui and Nongqi couldn't help but feel sorry for her. They finally understood why Chu Hen cared so much for Yi Yao. This girl was indeed as pure and kind as a piece of white paper. Wuong Valley was really evil. However, the biggest problem in front of everyone was how to get rid of the side effects of the heaven adversity pill in Yi Yao's body. Without the heaven adversity pill, Yi Yao would die sooner or later. Unless they obtained the refining method of the pill and used it to support Yi Yao, she would live. However, the heaven adversity pill could only be found in Wuong Valley. It was impossible to obtain. Miss Yi Yao, there's something I don't understand, Haozi suddenly asked. Brother Haozi, please speak. Who is controlling you? The few of them were stunned. They seemed to have overlooked this most important question. Yi Yao first glanced at Chu Hen, then pursed her red lips and said softly, Shintuiting what? The moment these words sounded, Hua Shui and Nongqi's expressions changed drastically once again. A dense solemnness surged out. Their knitted eyebrows were filled with helplessness. Who is this person? Chu Hen asked coldly. The young master of Honesty Valley. He's also the most talented genius in Honesty Valley. Nongqi said helplessly. If it was someone else, they might have a chance of obtaining the method to obtain the Heaven Dusk pill from that person. However, Shintui Tian was a famous figure in the entire Eastern Victory State. Just take Northern Sky Merchant Group's Lu Chuanfeng, for example. He couldn't even raise his head before Shintui Tian. However, even so, the coldness in Chu Hen's eyes did not diminish. Let alone the fact that he's the young master of Innocence Valley. Even if he were the Valley Master, I wouldn't just watch as little Yao was harmed by him. Chu Hen, don't be rash. Nongqi hurriedly dissuaded him. She had already guessed what Chu Hen wanted to do, so she continued, Honesty Valley's strength can be ranked in the top 10 in the entire Eastern Victory State. In terms of overall strength, even our Mount Kunliu isn't a match for it. If you trespass into Honesty Valley, you'll definitely die. Big brother Chu Hen, don't take this risk. Yi Yao instinctively grabbed his arm as well. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. Actually, little Yao is already very satisfied to be able to see you again. Even if I die by your side, I'm not afraid at all. Yi Yao knew very well how dangerous it was to trespass into Honesty Valley. Take Shintui Tian, for example. He was a top powerhouse with a cultivation of the 7th level of the Earth Profound Realm. Not to mention that he had 4 bodyguards by his side, and these 4 bodyguards were all people with extremely powerful cultivations. The difference between them was huge. With Chu Hen's current cultivation, you probably couldn't even get close to Shintui Tian, let alone snatch the Heaven Dust Pill and the method from him. One of the top 10 powers in the Victory East State. Chu Hen couldn't help but clench his fists so tightly that his knuckles made cracking sounds. In the few months that he'd been in the Victory East State, Chu Hen had a rough idea of what the Victory East State was like. There were many crouching tigers and hidden dragons in this province. The 100 Nations provinces didn't even amount to 1/10,000th of it. Take the powerful Mount Kunliu, for example. There were many more powerful sects and powers in the Victory East State. Especially after Gong Yanyu left, Mount Kunliu was even less of a match for Honesty Valley. So, even if they used Mount Kunliu's name to ask for the Heaven Dusk Pills formula, Honesty Valley wouldn't compromise, let alone with just Chu Hen alone. In the face of absolute power, no matter how great Chu Hen's potential and talent were, it seemed pale and powerless. But the more Yi Yao thought for Chu Hen, the more upset she felt. With Chu Hen's personality, how could he just watch her die in front of him? Chu Hen definitely couldn't do that. Just as the few of them were at their wits' end, Hao Zi continued to ask, Little Yao, are you sure that person was Shintui Tian? Hao Zi and Chu Hen were like brothers. In addition, Little Yao had just called him Big Brother Hao Zi, so Hao Zi naturally changed the way he addressed him. It sounded more intimate. Yi Yao nodded. I'm sure. Although Yi Yao's consciousness had been controlled by this soul separation powder in the Vain Passion Valley, everything that had happened during that period of time was imprinted in her mind. She didn't forget any of the things and people she'd met. Hao Zi nodded slightly and said, Then I'm even more confused. Oh, everyone was startled, and even Chu Hen revealed a bit of astonishment. Confused about what? Since Shintui Tian is controlling Little Yao, then he most likely has his eyes on Little Yao's bloodline limit. However, according to my understanding of the wedding gown profound body, it can only have one bloodline limit. If he has the first one, then he can't have a second one. If he has to have a second one, then after the transplant, the first bloodline limit will disappear. Am I right? Hao Zi looked at Hua Shui and Nongqi. The 2 girls nodded. Nongqi gave an affirmative answer and said, Indeed. Just like a woman getting married, she can only wear the wedding gown for one man. You can have many choices, but you can't marry 2 people at the same time. The wedding gown profound body is the same. It can only plunder one bloodline limit. If you obtain the second one, the first one will disappear. The other party's explanation could be considered to be very detailed. Hao Zi nodded again. He looked at Chu Hen and said, Although Little Yao's yin-yang profound body belongs to the top ranks of profound bodies, it isn't the strongest. Without Wang Valley's ability, I believe that it shouldn't be too difficult to find someone with a bloodline limit that surpasses Little Yao. So, I feel that Shintui Tian has an ulterior motive. Hao Zi's guess caused a few of them to be unable to help but sink in a deep thought. What the other party said was not without reason. Yi Yao's physique was indeed not the strongest profound body. However, from the fact that she was able to reach the Earth Profound Realm from an ordinary Wu Xiao in a short few years, it was sufficient to show how much importance Wu Wang Valley placed on her, especially the powerful killing move that Yi Yao had used earlier. It also showed how much effort Shintui Tian had put into nurture her. What exactly was the reason? Why did Shinto Etienne place so much importance on Yi Yao? Saint physique. These two words came out of Yi Yao's mouth and directly broke the strange silence. What? The pupils of the few people faintly shrunk. Even Chu Hen stared at him in astonishment. Yi Yao bit her red lips and slowly said, "When Shinto Etienne was talking to his bodyguards, I was standing at the side." "What did they say?" Haozi continued to ask. "They said that they wanted my physique to evolve into a saint physique, fusing yin and yang, seizing good fortune, Tai Chi saint physique." Yi Yao enunciated her words clearly and with emphasis. However, everyone was especially shocked when they heard it. They found it hard to believe. It must be known that the difficulty of evolving from the yin-yang profound body to the Tai Chi saint physique was unimaginable. No matter what kind of heaven-defying ability Wu Wang Valley possessed, it would probably be difficult for him to achieve this weight. The few of them suddenly thought of something. Suddenly, they came to their senses. They looked at each other and shouted a few words in unison. "Ancient desolate heaven territory." Whoosh! In an instant, the few of them could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Shinto Etienne had really played a big game of chess. Compared to his father, who was the Valley Master, Shinto Etienne was even more ambitious. A series of questions were answered in an instant. All their questions were immediately answered. Shinto Etienne most likely knew that the ancient desolate heaven territory had the power to evolve Yi Yao's yin-yang profound body into the Tai Chi saint physique. That was why he had schemed to constantly strengthen her cultivation and bloodline, all for the sake of a huge harvest and transforming into a saint physique. This fellow is really something. Rat sighed from the bottom of his heart. On the other hand, Chu Hen's face became more and more unsightly, and the rising killing intent in his eyes became more and more intense. Although he had never met Shinto Etienne, Chu Hen's hatred for Shinto Etienne was exceptionally strong. Hearing this, Haozi's small eyes flashed with a special light. "Since that's the case, I already have a solution. Oh, that is to send little Yao back and beat him at his own game." However, seeing that Chu Hen was about to flare up again, Haozi hurriedly stretched out his hand to stop him. "Don't be anxious. Right now, we don't have a better way to control the side effects of the Heaven Dusk pill in little Yao's body. The best way is to let Shinto Etienne continue to supply her with Heaven Dusk pills. For the sake of the Saint Physique bloodline, Shinto Etienne definitely won't let anything happen to little Yao. What little Yao has to do is pretend to be controlled by the soul separation powder until he helps little Yao evolve into a saint physique. At that time, all the problems will be solved." Haozi is right. Hua Shui hurriedly agreed. As long as little Yao achieves a saint physique, she can use her powerful bloodline to suppress the side effects of the Heaven Dusk pill. She won't be controlled anymore. The sacred winged heavenly flame sparrow had previously told Chu Hen about the method to resolve the side effects of the Heaven Dusk pill. However, for Yi Yao to go back, in Chu Hen's eyes, it was like returning to a tiger's den. It was truly difficult for him to relax. However, this was the best choice for now. If Yi Yao really evolved into a Tai Chi holy physique in the ancient desolate heaven domain, it would definitely be a great opportunity for her. But I'm worried that Shinto Etienne will first seize little Yao's yin-yang profound physique, and then go to the ancient desolate heaven domain to search for the method to become a saint. Chu Hen voiced out his worries. "That shouldn't be possible," Nongqi denied. She said the bloodline boundary that was seized from the yin-yang profound physique belongs to someone else. No matter how good the compatibility is, it won't be as smooth as the original owners. In comparison, there will be a huge difference in the speed at which the bloodline boundary rises. With Shinto Etienne's personality, he won't be so impatient. Chu Hen's eyes slightly narrowed. Indeed, if Shinto Etienne wanted the yin-yang profound physique, he would have made a move long ago. He wouldn't have waited until now. The reason why he hadn't made a move until now was because of the Tai Chi holy physique. After careful consideration, letting Yi Yao return to Shinto Etienne's side was indeed the best choice. Not only could he preserve Yi Yao's life, but he also had the chance to become a saint and obtain a holy physique. This could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. However, the most important thing was that Yi Yao's soul-detaching powder had already been neutralized. In front of Shinto Etienne, he had to be careful in every aspect. If he gave himself away even the slightest bit, it would be self-defeating and the consequences would be unimaginable. This was also what Chu Hen was worried about. "Little Yao, what do you think?" Chu Hen asked in a low voice. Yi Yao smiled faintly. Her eyes curved, looking very cute. "I'll listen to Big Brother, Chu Hen." Chapter 689. Let me think about it. A slightly hoarse answer fully expressed Chu Hen's helplessness at the moment. This was the first time Chu Hen had come to the Eastern Victory Province. To Chu Hen, Innocence Valley was undoubtedly a colossus. Even Mount Kunliu couldn't compete with it, let alone Chu Hen, whose cultivation was only at the peak of the 9th level of the void-piercing realm. It had to be said that Chu Hen had already tried his best. It was enough for countless people to look up to him from the tiny reigning flame city to where he was today. However, at this moment, Chu Hen also suddenly realized that he was just a frog at the bottom of a well in the past. Compared to the outside world, the place he had stayed in before was still too small. "Little Yao, rest for a while," Chu Hen said softly. The other party's body had not fully recovered, and the poison of the soul separation powder had just been removed. She was still in a very weak state. She had already used up a lot of energy talking to everyone just now. Yi Yao nodded obediently, then laid down on the stone slab, gently closed her eyes, and fell asleep. Chu Hen looked back at Haozi, Hua Shui, and Nongqi. There was a hint of deepness in his eyes. "You guys go back to Jilu City first. I'll stay here to take care of little Yao. I'll meet up with you guys in a few days." After Songhai City, the team split into two groups. The three of them came to find Chu Hen, while Danjun led the others to Jilu City to inquire about the Heaven and Earth Mystic Yellow Order. Although Chu Hen believed in Danjun's leadership and execution ability, it was safer with Haozi, a profound world realm expert. Here, Yi Yao's poison of the soul separation powder had been removed, so there was no need for too many people to look after her. The three of them nodded. They also knew that Chu Hen's mood was very heavy at the moment. It was good to leave him alone for a while. "This is for you." Hua Shui took out a transparent glass bottle. The bottle flowed with wisps of golden spiritual liquid, like a spiritual spring. "This is the antidote for the soul separation powder. She has already taken it once. After 24 hours, give her the rest. In the future, her body will produce antibodies to the soul separation powder. Even if someone feeds her the soul separation powder, it won't have any effect on her." In Hua Shui's opinion, Chu Hen would eventually let Yao return to Wuang Valley. After all, there was no other choice, unless he wanted Yi Yao to continue living. After returning, it was hard to guarantee that Yi Yao would not be controlled by the soul separation powder again. Therefore, before that, he had to be fully prepared. Chu Hen cautiously took the small bottle from the other party's hand. "I understand. Be careful on the road. Also, tell Shan Jun to prioritize everyone's safety and not to recklessly snatch the Heaven and Earth Mystic yellow tokens." "I know. Senior brother Dan Jun is not as impulsive as you." Hua Shui cursed with a little dissatisfaction. Chu Hen smiled embarrassedly. "I will go back by myself. You don't have to come back to find me." "You be careful too," Nongqi reminded him. "Don't worry, leave it to me," Haozi also said. After giving a few simple instructions, Chu Hen watched the three of them leave the water curtain heaven formation and disappear into the horizon. After the three of them left, Chu Hen looked at the small glass bottle in his hand. He clenched his fist lightly, and a hint of coldness surged between his brows. He pondered on the spot for a moment, then returned to Yi Yao's side. He leaned against the edge of the stone bed and sat on the ground. Perhaps it was because her body was too weak, but Yi Yao had already fallen asleep. However, her brows were tightly knitted together, and she let out a sound of dreams from time to time. Her slightly hurried breathing made it seem like she was in a nightmare that she could not escape from. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't want to kill you. I'm sorry." Yi Yao's hands tightly gripped the blanket covering her body. Her long eyelashes kept trembling, and she looked especially heart-wrenching. Chu-Hen sighed helplessly and gently held her little hand. "What a silly girl. You're blaming yourself, even in your dreams. It's not your fault. Everyone knows that it wasn't your intention." Perhaps it was because she heard Chu-Hen's words, or perhaps the nightmare was gradually receding, but Yi Yao's state slowly returned to normal. She held on to Chu-Hen's hand like she was holding a precious treasure, and she was not willing to let go even in her deep sleep. Chu-Hen knelt beside the bed and quietly watched her sleep. After a few years, Yi Yao's appearance had become more exquisite, and she was less childish than before. Her temperament had also changed, and she had become more perfect. However, from beginning to end, her sincere feelings for Chu-Hen remained the same. After a while, when he saw that Yi Yao's breathing had become even and stable, Chu-Hen gently withdrew his hand and found a place to sit down. When he was bored, he still needed to find something to do to pass the time. Fortunately, Chu-Hen's time had never stopped. Buzz, with a move of his palm, a white light flashed, and a strange scroll immediately appeared in Chu-Hen's hand. The scroll was thick and solid, and a layer of faint dark purple light patterns floated on its surface. This scroll was obtained some time ago in the ancient city of the wind-soaring origin. At that time, when they were fighting for the 10,000 beast fruit, Chu-Hen was attacked from behind by the man from the Liao clan and was accidentally knocked into the ancient pagoda in the west. There were many bookshelves and ancient books in the ancient pagoda. Chu-Hen also accidentally obtained a Xian token inside, and before leaving the pagoda, he accidentally picked up this scroll. Due to the urgent situation at that time, Chu-Hen didn't have time to study what this scroll was. Now that he was sitting here with nothing to do, he simply took it out to take a look. There's still so many 10,000 beast fruits. I'll wait to try my luck and see if I can find a satisfactory monster to help me. Chu-Hen muttered to himself. Then he placed the scroll on the ground and spread it open. As the scroll was opened, a string of mysterious rune numbers gradually appeared in front of Chu-Hen's eyes. This is? Chu-Hen's eyes lit up. He knew many of these rune numbers, and as long as he studied them carefully, it wouldn't be difficult to translate their meaning. The rune numbers occupied about 1/10 of the entire scroll. The rest of the space was completely blank, without any words. And in the last section of the blank area of the scroll, a few bold words were engraved. Revolving picture of 10,000 beasts. Revolving picture of 10,000 beasts? Chu-Hen was startled, and his eyes showed some surprise. It seemed that this was not an ordinary item. Then, Chu-Hen's gaze shifted to the rune numbers at the beginning of the scroll and began to translate their meaning one by one and began to study them. A day passed quietly. The valley was exceptionally quiet in the early morning. The flowers and grass were stained with dew, and the white mist shrouded the mountains. Phew! Chu-Hen stretched his body and rubbed his slightly dry eyes. Unknowingly, he had been studying for an entire day. With his understanding of the rune skills, Chu-Hen roughly understood the meaning of this rune. This revolving picture of 10,000 beasts was an out-and-out treasure. I've picked up a great bargain. Chu-Hen was pleasantly surprised, and his eyes surged with unconcealable joy. It turned out that this revolving picture of 10,000 beasts was a summoning treasure, and it was a scroll used to summon monsters. The 10,000 beast fruit had the miraculous effect of getting close to monsters, but the biggest flaw was that it could not be brought along with it at all times. This revolving picture of 10,000 beasts made up for this flaw. As long as there was a drop of blood essence from a monster, it could become a summoned beast of the revolving picture of 10,000 beasts, and it could be summoned to Chu-Hen's location at any time. This was definitely a good treasure. The more Chu-Hen read, the more shocked and excited he became. As long as he had this revolving picture of 10,000 beasts, he could directly build a huge monster army. However, the premise was that he needed to find a suitable monster. "Big Brother Chu-Hen, what are you doing?" A sweet voice that was as clear and melodious as a silver bell sounded beside his ear. Following that, a quick-witted and cute young girl leaned on Chu-Hen's shoulder from behind and winked her eyes a little mischievously. Chu-Hen raised his eyebrows and smiled. "You've slept for an entire day. Are you feeling okay? And in. Yi Yao quickly nodded, and then sat opposite Chu Hen. I haven't slept so comfortably for a long time. Big brother Chu Hen, are you studying martial arts? No, I picked up a treasure. Do you want me to show it to you? You can still pick up treasures? Yi Yao opened her big bright eyes, and then smiled. I also have a few treasures to give to big brother Chu Hen. Chapter 690. I have a few treasures I want to give to big brother Chu Hen. With a flip of Yi Yao's delicate hand, a faint white pattern of light flashed in the air, and then 3 fan-shaped dark gold command tokens appeared in her hand. Heaven and Earth mystic yellow command tokens. Chu Hen's eyes lit up, and he looked at Yi Yao with slight astonishment. She actually gathered 3 Heaven and Earth mystic yellow commands. After all, Chu Hen himself had only obtained 2, and one of them was picked up in the ancient pagoda. Strictly speaking, only the one he snatched from the man from the fangs could be considered to have been obtained by relying on his own ability. How is it? Am I very formidable? Yi Yao blinked her eyes mischievously, and then she passed the 3 command tokens to Chu Hen. However, Chu Hen had no intention of receiving them. He pondered for a moment and said, Did Shinto Etienne ask you to come out and gather the Heaven and Earth mystic yellow commands? Yes. A trace of sadness flashed past Yi Yao's eyes. He would send someone to bring me news of the Heaven and Earth mystic yellow commands every time, and then he would ask me to gather them myself. Why would he give you such a dangerous mission? Chu Hen's tone was slightly gloomy. Since Shinto Etienne attached so much importance to Yi Yao's yin-yang profound body, could it be that he wasn't worried that something would happen to her while she was fighting for the Heaven and Earth mystic yellow command? If Yi Yao were to unfortunately lose her life, then all that Shinto Etienne had done before would be for naught. Yi Yao lightly shook her head, and her red lips lightly parted. His objective is to allow me to utilize actual combat, to master those skills, and utilize them freely. At that time, besides the bloodline boundary of the yin-yang profound body, all the formidable skills I possess will be substituted. At that time, he wouldn't need to comprehend them by himself. Damn it. Chu Hen clenched his fists, and his eyes emitted a cold light that wanted to kill. This Shinto Etienne is truly detestable to the point of making one's hair stand on end. But you almost died at the hands of Lu Chuanfeng that day. Chu Hen said coldly. It won't happen. Yi Yao denied it decisively. There must be experts from the Valley of Innocence hiding in Shanghai City. Even if you weren't there that day, Lu Chuanfeng wouldn't have been able to kill me. Although Yi Yao had been in a state where she had lost her sense of self, she knew a lot of things. Because of the soul separation powder, Yi Yao would often be by Shinto Etienne's side when he gave orders to his subordinates. After all, Yi Yao was poisoned by the soul detachment powder, so she would definitely not disobey Shinto Etienne's orders. Therefore, at certain times, if Shinto Etienne wanted his subordinates to do something, there was no need to avoid Yi Yao. In that case, the people from Wuong Valley hiding in Shanghai City are definitely looking for you. And Yi Yao nodded. She raised her head to look at Chu Hen, and her eyes softened slightly. She wanted to tell Chu Hen that she actually didn't want to return to Wuong Valley at all. Even if staying meant waiting for death, she just wanted to quietly stay by Chu Hen's side, even if it was to spend the last moments of her life. But Yi Yao also knew very well that with Chu Hen's personality, he definitely wouldn't just watch her die. He might even barge into Wuong Valley alone for Yi Yao to find the Heaven Adversity pill to prolong her life. In order to make Chu Hen feel at ease, Yi Yao had already made up her mind. At least there was still a glimmer of hope for that decision. All right, brother Chu Hen, hurry up and take these. Yi Yao placed the 3 Heaven and Earth mystic yellow tokens in his hands. A bitter smile appeared on Chu Hen's face. With his understanding of Yi Yao, how could he not guess what she was thinking? Ever since she was young, this girl only cared about herself while thinking about others. Just as Haozi had analyzed earlier, there was at least a glimmer of hope if he chose to let Yi Yao go back. Immediately, Chu Hen smiled knowingly and replied, If you hand these things over to me, how will you answer to Shinto Etienne? Brother Chu Hen, you're so stupid. Of course we have to act more realistically. Since you captured me, Isn't it for the heaven and earth mystic yellow token in my hands? Huh. Chu Hen couldn't help but be stunned. He immediately understood. Indeed, he had attacked Lu Chuanfeng and rescued Yi Yao. He naturally had a motive, and the best excuse was for the heaven and earth mystic yellow token. Now that there were not a single heaven and earth mystic yellow token left, even a fool would be able to see that there was something fishy about it. Chu Hen shook his head in slight embarrassment. His emotions had been too chaotic these past few days, and he couldn't calm himself down. There were many things that he lacked consideration for. Normally, with Chu Hen's shrewdness, he would definitely not make such a low-level mistake. All right, then I'll accept these 3 heaven and earth mystic yellow tokens. Yi Yao nodded in satisfaction. In her opinion, she could finally do something for Chu Hen. Chu Hen roughly glanced at the 3 tokens. They were the earth token, the black token, and the yellow token. Only the heaven token was missing. In other words, only the yellow token was useful to Chu Hen. The remaining 2 tokens were of little value. I'm just missing the heaven token. The corner of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed slightly. He thought to himself, I'll see if there's anyone left with a heaven's medallion. I can use the extra earth and profound medallions to exchange with them. Of course, Chu Hen had a total of 5 tokens in his hands. Compared to Nangong Hao from the Demon Slayer Hall and Lung Lingyan from the Void Hall, this should be a considerable bargaining chip. They might not necessarily have collected more heaven and earth mystic yellow tokens than Chu Hen. Returning to Mount Kunliu with this kind of result would give him some confidence. Chu Hen accepted the 3 heaven and earth mystic yellow tokens, which meant that Yi Yao was about to return to Wuang Valley. Then, Chu Hen took out the antidote for the soul-detaching powder that Hua Shui left behind and handed it to her. Little Yao, take this. Hua Shui left this for you. As long as you drink it, your body will form the antidote for the soul-detaching powder, and you won't have to worry about your consciousness being controlled. All right, thank that beautiful sister for me. Yi Yao was very obedient. Without hesitation, she poured the bottle of golden spiritual liquid into her mouth and swallowed it. Then, Chu Hen took out an exquisite white jade and placed it in front of her. The jade was carved with strange, vine-like runes. It was very exquisite. What is this? Yi Yao asked in surprise. It's something that can save your life. Take it with you. If you encounter danger, it can save you 3 times. Chu Hen said solemnly. This jade was what that mysterious woman had given to Chu Hen on the night Luo Mengchong left. Since he could only use it 3 times, Chu Hen had never dared to waste these 3 opportunities. Looking at this item, Chu Hen couldn't help but think of that devastatingly beautiful face. Thinking about it, Luo Mengchong had already left him for more than 4 months. Where was she now? Was she doing well? Looking at the gentle longing that flowed involuntarily from between Chu Hen's brows, Yi Yao clenched her fists lightly. The sadness in her eyes was fleeting. She shook her head and said, There's no need. Brother Chu Hen, you should keep this. I'm confident that they won't be able to see through it. I'll only be at ease if you keep it, Chu Hen insisted. Yi Yao still refused. Brother Chu Hen, there are 2 personal maidservants watching over my daily life in Wuang Valley. Anything I have on me will be searched by them and reported to Shinto Itian. If I keep it, it will only make people suspicious. Is that so? Chu Hen frowned, and his face faintly turned frosty. It seemed that even with the soul separation powder, Yi Yao still lived under the surveillance of others every day. This made Chu Hen somewhat worried. All right, Brother Chu Hen, I still have something to ask you. Yi Yao gently patted Chu Hen's arm and stared at him curiously. How do you know how to use the Great Tao energy? The Great Tao energy? What Great Tao energy? The explosive strike from the fusion of Reiki energy and true origin energy. Didn't you use it against Lu Chuanfeng the other day? You're talking about that. Chu Hen returned to his senses. Is that called the Great Tao energy? Yes. The fusion of spirit and martial arts, the harmony of yin and yang, the growth of all living things, the repulsion of all living things, and so on. There are many powers in this world that are called the Great Tao energy. Your spirit and martial arts combined attack, and my yin and yang energy are both a type of the great Tao energy. Although Yi Yao's consciousness had been controlled in Wuong Valley, it was undeniable that she had learned a lot and mastered many abilities. The most special thing about the soul separation powder was that it would not affect the other person's ability to comprehend and talent while splitting their personality. This could be said to be the only gain. I see. Chu Hen smiled. Then, with a flick of his palm, he took out a black stone that was the size of a fist. The surface of the stone was covered with strange stone patterns. There were edges and corners, and it was extremely irregular, as if it was a fragment that had fallen off from some object. A fragment of the divine stone of the great path. Before Chu Hen could explain, Yi Yao shouted it out. Chu Hen was even more stunned. How did you know? When Chu Hen had given this fragment to Ji Shu to study, she had suspected that it was a fragment that had fallen from the divine stone of the great path. But he did not think that Yi Yao would be able to recognize his name with just a glance. This really made Chu Hen extremely astonished. Then, Yi Yao waved her hand. Buzz! The space trembled, and a bright white light flashed. A strange black stone suddenly appeared in front of Chu Hen. This black stone was about half a meter tall and 30 centimeters wide. It was also very irregular, angular, and covered with strange stone patterns. This is... Chu Hen's eyes widened in surprise. What caused people to feel even more shocked was that the moment this stone appeared, Chu Hen could faintly feel a trace of obscure energy fluctuation surging within the black stone fragment in his hand. Chapter 691. OM. Chu Hen was extremely surprised when he saw the black stone that Yi Yao had taken out. Chu Hen could clearly feel a strange energy fluctuation surging from the fragment in his hand. The two stones seemed to have met an acquaintance, and they were extremely restless, as if they were responding to each other. This is... Take a guess. Yi Yao smiled mischievously. Chu Hen looked at her meaningfully and said tentatively, could it be that this is a fragment of the divine Tao stone as well? Big brother Chu Hen has become smarter again. Chu Hen smiled. Don't laugh at me. Where did you get this? Could it be that Shinto Iqian again? Yi Yao nodded. Yes, this fragment of the divine Tao stone contains the great Tao energy of the yin and yang attribute. All the skills and secret techniques I've mastered were comprehended from this divine Tao stone. Is that so? Chu Hen's eyelids twitched. He was very surprised. He had personally witnessed the powerful martial techniques that Yi Yao had executed in Haitian City and Shanghai City. The power that erupted from any of them was shocking, especially the moon encasing heavenly dance, thousand phantoms. It had instantly killed a few dozen experts from the Northern Gone Trading Company. At that time, it had definitely shocked the entire city. The power contained in this divine Tao stone had obviously far surpassed the small fragment in Chu Hen's hand. On the other hand, Shinto Iqian had naturally given this fragment to Yi Yao so that she could study it herself. After she comprehended the great Tao energy within it, she would plunder all the great Tao energy from it. Needless to say, Shinto Iqian's wishful thinking was really good. The moment Chu Hen thought about it, he could not help but burn with rage. Looks like besides the 3 heaven and earth black-yellow tokens, this fragment of the divine Tao stone will be taken away by big brother Chu Hen as well, said Yi Yao with a smile. Chu Hen was stunned. You want to leave it to me? Yes. Since big brother Chu Hen was able to comprehend the grand Tao energy of the fusion of martial and spirit, then I believe that you'll surely be able to learn the grand Tao energy of the circulation of yin and yang. Thinking of the powerful, unique skill that Yi Yao had performed in Sea City, Chu Hen was a little tempted. However, the energy of yin and yang changed unpredictably, and they reinforced and countered each other. The profundities contained within them were extremely profound, so how could it be easily grasped? A large part of the reason why Yi Yao was able to grasp such powerful strength was because of her yin-yang profound body bloodline boundary. If it was an ordinary person, it would be very difficult to pry into the profoundness within. For example, the young master of Innocence Valley, Shinto Iqian, Perhaps it was because he was unable to control the energy within it that he allowed Yi Yao to comprehend and utilize it. In the end, he reaped the fruits of Yi Yao's labor and forcefully seized all of Yi Yao's abilities. Chu Hen wanted to give it a try, but he was afraid of wasting too much time on it. After all, he still had the 7-star scripture to cultivate, and he still had to study the single sword-flying immortal technique that he just learned. Gathering the strengths of hundreds of schools of thought wasn't bad, but Chu Hen knew the principle of biting off more than he could chew. Let's give it a try. Big brother Chu Hen, I'll teach you how to communicate with the Grand Tao energy within it. Yao seemed to really hope that Chu Hen could grasp the energy within the God Stone. She held his hand like a spoiled little girl. It was hard for others to refuse. Chu Hen was helpless against her, so he smiled and said, all right. I'm afraid of you. Today, I'll be your student and listen to your wise advice. Hee. Then you have to listen carefully. This kind of opportunity is very rare. Yi Yao's eyes curved, and her smile was cute like a crescent moon. She immediately started to explain to Chu Hen the ingenious method to grasp the energy of yin and yang. The energy of yin and yang reinforce and subdue each other. They coexist in the world and in the Grand Tao. Other than Wu Xiao, who focuses on cultivating the energy of yin and yang, and people like me who possess the bloodline limit of the yin-yang profound body, it's very difficult for ordinary people to produce a relatively large amount of energy of yin and yang. Therefore, at this time, we need to borrow the energy of yin and yang in the world. Yi Yao explained in detail to Chu Hen very seriously. Chu Hen also listened very seriously and remembered every single word that the other party said in his heart. Everything in the world coexists with yin and yang. Only when yin and yang are in harmony can all things be born. Therefore, the energy of yin and yang in the world is very large. As long as it's used well, it can still explode with an extremely powerful force. During the day, the energy of yang is at its strongest and it's dominant. At night, the energy of yin is dominant. And the time when the energy of yin and yang is at its most balanced is when yin and yang alternates. The two periods of time when day and night change are respectively at dawn in the morning and at sunset in the evening. So, Big Brother Chu Hen, you have to make good use of these two periods of time every day to comprehend the energy of yin and yang. Next, I'll teach you how to communicate with this fragment of the Great Tao Divine Stone. As long as you comprehend according to my method, you'll definitely gain something. 4 hours later, the exchange ended. After a full 4 hours, after listening to all of Yi Yao's knowledge, Chu Hen already had a feeling of sudden enlightenment. The profound meaning of the Grand Tao of yin and yang could be said to be broad and profound. It was as if Chu Hen had opened a door to a new plane, and his horizons had once again risen to a new level. Big Brother Chu Hen, do you understand everything? Yi Yao lightly pursed her somewhat dry lips. She swore that this was the most words she had spoken since she was born, and she was about to die of exhaustion. As she was afraid that it would be difficult for Chu Hen to understand such a new thing for the first time, she explained every aspect in great detail. Chu Hen smiled, gently pinched her little face, and said, I understand most of it. It's already very good. This kind of thing depends on one's own comprehension. Actually, I've only comprehended a little bit of the power of yin and yang. My little Yao can open an academy to teach. How about I give you the position of dean? Chu Hen joked. Big Brother Chu Hen, you're joking with me again. Try and see if you can communicate with this divine stone fragment according to my method. All right. Chu Hen let out a long sigh of relief, adjusted his state, and then nodded to Yi Yao with a smile. Then he stretched out his palms and placed them on the half-meter-tall divine stone fragment. A warm feeling came from the palm of his left hand, but the palm of his right hand felt a touch of coldness. Buzz! Subsequently, a majestic surge of true origin energy was released from Chu Hen's palms and surged toward the divine stone fragment. In the next moment, the divine stone fragment rapidly absorbed Chu Hen's true origin energy like a sponge absorbing water. Chu Hen did not move, or hear anything as he continuously channeled energy into the divine stone fragment. Buzz. After nearly 2 hours, the fragment of the god's stone suddenly shone brightly, like a star in the ninth heaven, releasing a sparkling luster. Subsequently, Chu Hen's mind trembled, and his vision became distorted and dreamy. What was even stranger was that Chu Hen felt an extremely powerful force pulling his consciousness. This feeling was extremely similar to when Chu Hen comprehended the Tao energy of the fusion of soul and martial arts previously. However, there was also a difference. Subsequently, Chu Hen gently closed his eyes and used the method Yao taught him to communicate with the divine stone fragment using his consciousness. Time passed by minute. After an unknown period of time, buzz. The space around him trembled. Subsequently, Chu Hen only felt his consciousness suddenly being pulled into another space. His consciousness turned from blurry to clear, and he soon discovered that he had entered a black, hole-like vortex. The strange vortex was like a tunnel that traversed through time and space. An endless stream of light flew before Chu Hen's eyes, continuously entering an even deeper area. Whoosh! After an unknown period of time, Chu Hen seemed to have traversed through an infinite number of stars for a long time. In front of him was a bright passageway that was like the end of a tunnel. Chu Hen's vision suddenly broadened and magnified infinitely, accompanied by a dazzling light. Chu Hen looked up and saw that in the chaotic world in front of him, there were actually 2 balls of light floating. One was black and the other was white, and they were chasing each other. The air was rippling like the surface of water. Boom! A powerful wave of air that blended black and white spread infinitely in all directions. Immediately after, the 2 balls of light immediately turned into a majestic Tai Chi array. Endless yin and yang forces began to rotate and intersect in the world where Chu Hen was. Chapter 692. Buzz. In the quiet and secluded valley, layers of light waves rippled in the air. The faint true essence light patterns were like ripples on the surface of water, creating waves of strange ripples. At this moment, in a spacious area, a young man and woman were continuously completing their exquisite moves in battle. The intersection of true essence caused the leaves on the ground to scatter, and the spiritual energy spread out. The 2 of them were not really fighting against each other, but rather sparring in terms of martial arts. Strong winds rose and wantonly mixed together. The auras of both parties were especially special, fierce but not gentle. Within the gentleness, there was a powerful hidden force mixed within. It could be said that there was softness within hardness, and hardness within softness. Big brother Chu Hen, receive my palm. At this moment, the quick-looking young girl smiled sweetly, and then stretched out a palm. Buzz! At the same time, a black and a white vortex gathered at the center of her palm, and rotated rapidly, like 2 yin and yang fish that were chasing each other. The fierce aura was mixed with a shocking hidden force. This palm seemed ordinary, but in reality, it contained an impact that was like the undercurrent of the deep sea. Facing the opponent's palm, Chu Hen's handsome eyebrows slightly raised, and he also raised his palm, only to see the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth rapidly converge into Chu Hen's palm and immediately transform into a black and a white yin and yang vortex. Yin-yang void palm. Yin-yang void palm. Boom! In the next moment, the palms of the 2 people collided head-on. Along with an incomparably dull explosion, a layer of surging black and white waves of energy was directly released from the palms of the 2 people. The powerful remnant power spread out, and with a sweeping force, it shook away all the colorful leaves in all directions, and cracks appeared on the ground. Big brother Chu Hen is really amazing. It only took you 3 days to be able to use the yin-yang void palm. Yi Yao withdrew her palm and said with a face full of surprise. Chu Hen also withdrew his aura and said with a smile, "It's because you taught me well." That's not it. It's just that big brother Chu Hen is so smart. His comprehension ability is really strong. Yi Yao's big eyes were filled with joy. Ever since she was young, she had always regarded Chu Hen as her idol. She had always admired him in her heart. 3 days ago, Yi Yao gave her fragment of the great Tao Divine Stone to Chu Hen. She also told him in detail how to effectively communicate with the great Tao of yin and yang within the fragment. Needless to say, Chu Hen enjoyed Yi Yao's words very much. On one hand, Yi Yao was very attentive in her teaching, and on the other hand, Chu Hen had a strong comprehension ability. In just a short span of 3 days, Chu Hen was already able to barely execute the yin-yang void palm. The yin-yang void palm was a combination of hardness and softness. It was a joint attack of yin and yang. The yang energy was ferocious, able to break rocks and gold and shatter the enemy's bones. The yin energy was ferocious, directly entering the internal organs and instantly shattering the enemy's internal organs. Previously in Shanghai City, Yi Yao's palm strike had never missed its target. Every palm strike would directly kill the experts of the Northern Qin Chamber of Commerce. The biggest reason for this was that the yin energy fused with it would directly shatter their internal organs. Of course, Chu Hen was far from reaching that level. Just now, Yi Yao had only used about 10% of her strength. Moreover, Yi Yao possessed the bloodline boundary of the yin-yang profound body. Her body could directly derive a huge amount of yin and yang energy. Chu Hen was different. His body could only condense a very small amount of yin and yang energy. Therefore, the yin-yang palm force that Chu Hen had executed earlier was completely extracted from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There was a fundamental difference between the two. In comparison, Yi Yao was more proficient and could use it freely. Big brother Chu Hen, your bloodline is unable to derive the power of yin and yang, so you can only borrow the power of heaven and earth. However, the power of yin and yang in the world is extremely huge. If you use it properly, it will not be any weaker than the power that I release. Yi Yao's beautiful eyes suffused with a faint soft line as she said softly. Chu Hen patted the other party's head and laughed. I understand, teacher Xiao Yao. Since you're here, I'm not worried that I won't be able to learn it. Yi Yao smiled faintly. She had no doubts about Chu Hen's ability. As long as Chu Hen made good use of the fragment of the great Tao Divine Stone, he would definitely be able to control the power of yin and yang to perfection in the future. Suddenly, Yi Yao's delicate body trembled slightly, and her lively and beautiful face turned pale. Chu Hen's heart jumped, and he hurriedly held her shoulder. Xiao Yao, what's wrong? Yi Yao's hands clenched into fists as she bit her red lips. She shook her head and squeezed out a smile. I'm fine, big brother Chu Hen. Has the side effect of the heaven damnation pill taken effect? Chu Hen's eyes narrowed, and he immediately realized what had happened. I'll be fine after resting for a while. Yi Yao's voice grew weaker and weaker. She grabbed Chu Hen's arm, and her fingers involuntarily exerted force. Chu Hen could clearly feel that her breathing had become rapid, and the blood flow in her body had clearly slowed. Once she lost the support of the heaven damnation pill, Yi Yao would die from the exhaustion of her bloodline. Chu Hen did not expect that the heaven damnation pill would take effect in just a few days. It seemed that he had to give her the heaven damnation pill. At this moment, a majestic and monstrous force suddenly swept in from outside the water screen skylight formation. Yi Yao's eyes trembled slightly, and she instinctively pushed Chu Hen's hand away. She reminded him in a deep voice, Big brother Chu Hen. Chu Hen's eyes widened, and he instantly understood what she meant. Without a word, he waved his hand, and a heavy and cold black chain shot out. Clatter, clatter. Along with the sound of the chain colliding, the chain swiftly bound Yi Yao like vines. In just a blink of an eye, Yi Yao had become Chu Hen's hostage. Almost at the same time, a peerless saber ray slashed down with a momentum that could cut the sky. In an instant, the space in the area above Chu Hen seemed to have been split open from the middle. The lake formed by the water-curtained skylight grand formation was split into two and was forcefully severed from the middle. Rumble. The space fell into a series of tremors and distortions, and pillars of light shot out in all directions. In just a blink of an eye, the water screen skylight formation was broken, and the space within 100 feet around Chu Hen was like a collapsing bubble. Thousands of illusory light and shadow fragments flew between heaven and earth. The surrounding environment immediately returned to the original appearance of the valley. Along with the mighty wave of air, 5 or 6 figures with powerful auras suddenly appeared in the void. Their cold auras surged towards Chu Hen below, and they were like wild beasts that could not be stopped. You really made it easy for us to find you. You really know how to hide. The rough and cold voice was like thunder, and the person who spoke was a tall and sturdy middle-aged man who was about 30 years old. The man was dressed in a brocade robe, and his whole body emitted a furious aura. He first glanced at Chu Hen, and then immediately shifted his gaze to Yi Yao, who was on the other side. At this moment, Yi Yao's expression was cold, and her eyes were indifferent. Her icy cold face seemed to be covered in a layer of frost that wouldn't melt for 1,000 years. Her body was bound by dark and heavy iron chains, and she looked like a hostage. "Who are you?" Chu Hen's brows knit together tightly, and traces of cold light flickered in his eyes. "Umph." The middle-aged man pointed at Chu Hen and shouted coldly, "You captured one of our people, and you still dare to ask who we are? Kill yourself to atone for your crimes." Arrogant. Absolutely arrogant. Chu Hen's eyes narrowed slightly, and he guessed that this person should be one of the 4 protectors by Shinta Etienne's side. After a few days, the people from Innocence Valley had finally found their way here. Needless to say, Shinta Etienne's ability really couldn't be underestimated. Fortunately, he made an agreement with Little Yao earlier. Once the people from Innocence Valley appeared here, Chu Hen would use her as a hostage to deceive them. The corners of Chu Hen's eyes squinted slightly, and he feigned a serious posture. He glanced at Yi Yao, and then he laughed coldly. "Committing suicide is the action of an idiot. Why don't we discuss a condition? Let me go, and I'll let this woman go. Otherwise, hiss, hiss." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Hen's hand condensed, and then a violent black-colored bolt of lightning flashed out explosively right away. It was like a sharp blade of lightning that pressed against the side of Yi Yao's throat. "What do you think? Do you think you have the qualifications to discuss conditions with me, the violent bear?" The middle-aged man scoffed at Chu Hen's actions. However, even though he spoke like this, he was secretly nervous in his heart. He was most clearly aware of how important Yi Yao was to them. If any mishap were to occur, then all of their heads would probably be lost. Chu Hen smiled frivolously. "I don't care if you're a violent bear or a black bear. If you don't let me go, then I'll drag someone down with me today. Since you guys found this place, this woman must be very important to you, right? I'll give you to the count of 3 to consider. 1, 2, 3. Before Chu Hen could finish saying the word 3, a powerful afterimage shot down from the sky. It was so fast that it was like a phantom. Stinking brat. You're too slow." The violent bear's ferocious voice suddenly came from behind. "What?" Chu Hen's heart skipped a beat. His eyes turned cold, and a powerful black-colored bolt of lightning directly exploded from his palm, blasting towards Yi Yao. He felt as though he wanted to drag someone down with him, even if he died. However, before the dark lightning energy could strike Yi Yao's body, a fist force that was as terrifying as a mountain ferociously struck Chu Hen's back. Bang! A muffled explosion startled a layer of vigorous airwave. As though he was hit by a tremendous force, Chu Hen's body bent into an arc and was directly sent flying. With a bang, he heavily collided with a mountain wall in the area in front of him. Rocks flew everywhere, dust rose, and more than half of the mountain range collapsed from the impact. "Chu!" Yi Yao's expression changed. Due to her concern for Chu Hen, she forgot the current situation and involuntarily cried out. Chapter 693. Chu. Seeing Chu Hen sent flying by Quan Xiong's punch, Yi Yao immediately forgot what was going on and subconsciously blurted out. Even though she'd only uttered one word, it was enough to catch Quan Xiong's attention. A cold glint flashed in his eyes as he swept his gaze over Yi Yao. Oh no, Yi Yao was alarmed. She was about to be exposed. At that moment, she suddenly had an idea and slumped weakly to the ground. Her delicate body trembled as she murmured something indistinct. Seeing Yi Yao's feeble expression, Guangxiong's thick brows lifted. He immediately realized that the Heaven Doom Pill's effect had taken effect, and it wasn't something she'd said. Guangxiong immediately rushed to Yi Yao's side and grabbed her chains with both hands. Then, as if he was snapping an ordinary rope, he snapped the heavy chains in 2 or 3 moves. All of you, take her and leave first. Guangxiong shouted at the other experts from Wuong Valley in an unquestionable tone. Yes, Protector Guangxiong. They hurriedly agreed. One of them raised his hand and shot a golden beam of light at Yi Yao. When the beam reached Yi Yao's side, it immediately transformed into a golden ball of light. The ball of light enveloped Yi Yao and quickly lifted her off the ground, rising into the sky. It looked like Yi Yao was wrapped in amber as she was brought to them by the Innocence Valley expert. They stood guard at 4 corners around Yi Yao and brought her up into the sky. Once the side effects of the Heaven Doom Pill took effect, it was extremely dangerous. If anything happened to Yi Yao here, none of them would be able to bear the consequences. Without the slightest hesitation, they escorted Yi Yao away as fast as they could. Yi Yao didn't dare make any big movements. She could only observe Chu Hen's condition from the corner of her eye. At this moment, Chu Hen was buried in a pile of rubble. No one knew if he was injured or not. However, since things had already come to this, Yi Yao could only keep her worries to herself and did not dare to reveal them. Beneath her cold gaze, there was an incomparable anxiety in her heart. Big brother Chu Hen, you must be fine. We'll meet again in the ancient desolate heaven domain. Yi Yao thought to herself. A dark ruthlessness surged in the eyes of the Guangxiong, who was left behind as he watched the few black dots gradually moving into the distance in the sky. He looked at the pile of rubble in front of him with disdain. His body moved, and he charged forward like a fierce tiger. "Ha! You dare to be presumptuous in front of me with just this bit of ability. Buzz buzz." A powerful aura erupted from Furious Bear's body like a torrent. He clenched one hand into a fist, and a powerful golden light blossomed from the tip of his fist. Guangxiong had an imposing manner, as if he wanted to kill Chu Hen on the spot. "You can die now." This, the overbearing and ferocious fist force, was like a dragon that had emerged from the sea as it pierced down. Tempestuous waves surged, mountains collapsed, and the ground cracked. The violent destructive force carried out a destructive attack. All the rocks of various sizes were crushed into powder, and even the entire mountain wall was blasted open with an enormous hole. As one of the 4 great protectors by Shanu Etien's side, there was no need to doubt Furious Bear's strength. His fist pierced through the 2 sides of the mountain, and it was truly shocking. However, to Furious Bear's surprise, there was no one in the ruins. Could it be that he blasted Chu Hen into pieces? Absolutely impossible. How could a person who was able to kill Northern Sky Trading Company's Lu Chuanfeng be an ordinary person? Boom! In the next moment, a shocking sword force suddenly swept over. Bang! A deafening explosion rang out, and a black sword light that was close to 1,000 meters long directly split the mountain range in front of the violent bear into 2, splitting it into 2. What? Furious Bear's expression changed slightly. The black sword light possessed a peerless, imposing aura, and there were gorgeous green markings surging within it as it slashed down towards Furious Bear without slowing down in the slightest. Bang! The terrifying sword light was like a god's attack, and it struck Furious Bear's body with shocking might. In an instant, the mountains shook while the ground split apart. With Furious Bear's location as the center, a world-shaking shock wave swept towards the surroundings. Thousands of rocks on the ground shattered inch by inch and shot into the sky. The vast sword light covered the heavens and the earth, and it instantly flattened the entire valley. Roar! There seemed to be an angry roar of a violent bear, and a circle of light waves that was hundreds of meters long bloomed from it. Together with the surging power that shook the heavens, An incomparably huge phantom of a violent bear actually appeared in the area where the violent power collided. Beneath the bear phantom, Furious Bear's face was gloomy and livid while he swept the surroundings with a savage gaze. "Cunning bastard, get the fuck out here." The bear's might caused the heavens and the earth to tremble before it. Especially when it was tricked by Chu Hen, it caused Furious Bear to be extremely furious. However, the surroundings were completely empty amidst the whirlwinds and rocks, and Chu Hen's figure was nowhere to be seen. He actually fled? Furious Bear was extremely furious. He charged into the sky along with a 300 tall phantom behind him, and then he smashed his fist forward and flattened a mountain below him once more. "Cowardly kid, get the fuck out here!" Furious Bear shouted coldly. This was the first time someone had dared to launch a sneak attack on him, and it truly infuriated him. Bang! Bang! Numerous mountains and rivers were flattened into ruins by Furious Bear's ferocious attacks, and waves of air that covered the sky swept through the sky. Under the violent bombardment, trees and forests were transformed into powder, mountains and waterfalls flowed backwards, and birds and beasts fled. In the blink of an eye, an area of over 5 kilometers had been completely turned over. But even then, Chu Hen seemed as if he'd vanished into thin air, and there wasn't a trace of his aura. Could it be that he really fled? Furious Bear's eyes squinted slightly, and then his figure immediately flashed towards another part of the horizon. Once Furious Bear left, this area returned to its calm state. Swish! In merely 10 minutes of time, Furious Bear returned once more, and he swept the surroundings before he muttered in a low voice. "Strange, his speed shouldn't be that swift, right?" Furious Bear stayed on the spot for a while, before he left once more. After around 10 minutes of time, Furious Bear returned for the second time. He didn't notice Qin Shi, and then he left. After that, Furious Bear repeatedly returned 5 times, and the time he took to return every single time was longer than before. However, there was no sign of Chu Hen in this expanse of ruins from the beginning until the end. That damnable bastard! Killing intent rose in Furious Bear's eyes as he cursed in a low voice, and then he transformed into a flowing light that vanished in the horizon towards the direction that Yi Yao and the others had left. After around 10 minutes of time, bang! A young figure flew out from a pile of rubble. That damnable bear finally left. Chu Hen narrowed his eyes slightly, and there was a hint of coldness surging between his brows. His figure was slightly disheveled, and there was a faint trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Furious Bear was much stronger than Lu Chuanfeng, and his previous punch had indeed caused a certain degree of injury to Chu Hen. Chu Hen lowered his head and looked at the dark blue luminous pearl in his hand. This was an aura-concealing pearl that could conceal one's aura, and it was one of Lu Chuanfeng's treasures. That day, when Hua Xue was rummaging through the antidote for the soul separation powder, she accidentally found it. Lu Chuanfeng's death had actually benefited him. At critical moments, those miscellaneous items could still come in handy. However, after this incident, Chu Hen also became more cautious. As expected, the people of Innocence Valley were not easy to deal with. Furious Bear cheated 5 times in a row before giving up. Fortunately, Chu Hen was able to keep his composure. If it were anyone else, they would have been tricked by Furious Bear 3 times at most. Looking at the distant horizon, Chu Hen clenched his fists, and his eyes surged with determination. "Little Yao, you have to be careful. We'll meet again in the ancient desolate heaven region. No matter what, I won't give up on you." Dazzling star-like light shone from Chu Hen's eyes. Chapter 694. Little Yao, you have to be careful. We'll meet again in the ancient Baron's heaven region. No matter what, Big Brother Chu Hen will not abandon you. 2 star-like lights flashed in Chu Hen's eyes. Right now, Wuwang Valley was an insurmountable monster to him. But one day, Chu Hen, will definitely step on it and get justice for Yi Yao. Chu Hen frowned as he looked in the direction that the people from Wuwang Valley had disappeared. He clenched his fists, and the dark blue aura-concealing pearl in his palm changed shape. Immediately, Chu Hen's figure moved, and he turned into a ray of light as he shot out. The vast forest and mountains were shrouded in illusory mist. The undulating mountains and rivers were like ancient dragons dancing up and down. In this world, humans and beasts had always coexisted. There was no doubt that this desolate forest was a paradise for demonic beasts. Roar! Roar! All sorts of shocking roars echoed in the depths of the forest. Chu Hen, who had arrived at this place, couldn't help but slow down his pace. At this place, he would encounter several powerful monstrous beasts every few thousand meters. However, Chu Hen had the aura-concealing pearl on him. Unless it was an extremely high-level beast king, no one would be able to discover Chu Hen, an uninvited guest. On the other hand, demonic beasts would not have too much of a taboo or fear here. Chu Hen could vaguely sense a few powerful and violent auras nearby. Buzz, a faint ripple of chi pattern flashed past, and 1,000 beast fruit with golden lines lingering around it appeared in Chu Hen's palm. The reason why Chu Hen came here was to choose a summoned beast. Since he had a treasure like the battle-revolving myriad beast diagram, he should make good use of it. There was no need to doubt the combat strength of the monstrous beasts. Moreover, a group of monstrous beasts would gather together and act as one's combat partners. Just the thought of it was enough to make one excited. Whoosh! Chu Hen's body flashed and landed on a spacious grassland. His eyes turned cold. Then, a wisp of true core strength was released from his palm and rushed toward the 1,000 beast fruit in his hand. In an instant, the 1,000 beast fruit blossomed with strands of soft light. These strands of light were like gossamer threads and were mixed with Chu Hen's true core energy. With a flick of his palm, the 1,000 beast fruit landed lightly on the ground. Then, something amazing happened. He saw that the 1,000 beast fruit that landed on the ground had actually turned into a lump of spirit liquid and merged into the soil. Just as Chu Hen was confused in his heart, the place where the lump of spirit liquid disappeared was actually growing out as speed visible to the naked eye. The sprout grew rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it had become a strange plant that was 30 centimeters tall. There was a bud at the top of the plant. The flower bud slowly bloomed, and a sparkling and translucent golden fruit appeared before Chu Hen's eyes. I see. Chu Hen's eyes lit up, and his heart was filled with novelty. It turned out that after this 1,000 beast fruit came into contact with the soil, it would automatically package itself and radiate a strange and eye-catching charm. The whole plant emitted a soft light, and its branches and leaves swayed with the wind, like an enchanting dancer. Moreover, the golden fruit at the top of the flower bud released a fragrance that seeped into the heart and spleen. This fragrance had an almost irresistible allure to the demonic beasts. Chu Hen glanced at the surroundings and did not stay in the same place for long. Instead, he directly flew toward the deeper parts of the mountain range. Although the 1,000 beast fruit had a great allure to the demonic beasts, at the same time, the existence of the Beast Emperor level was not weaker than the vigilance of humans. If the 1,000 beast fruit was delivered to the mouth of the other party face to face, they would not eat it at all. Therefore, the best way was to leave the 1,000 beast fruit here and let the demonic beasts take the bait willingly. As for the rest, Chu Hen did not care. In other words, there was a high probability and luck in using the 1,000 beast fruit. If the luck was good, they might encounter a less vigilant or more gluttonous beast emperor. If the luck was bad, other beast emperors would not be fooled, or other ordinary demonic beasts would be one step ahead of them. There was even the possibility of being eaten by some mountain cats and foxes. These had all happened before in the Victory State. However, for Chu Hen, these factors did not seem to need to be considered. The reason was very simple. He had more than 600,000 beast fruits. This number would definitely scare quite a few people to death. Previously at the wind-soaring origin, Chu Hen used the one-sword-flying immortal technique to snatch the 10,000 beast fruits. The number of 10,000 beast fruits he collected was more than the sum of the others. At that time in Shanghai City, Hua Shui and the others guessed that Chu Hen most likely obtained 300,000 beast fruits. In their opinion, this number should be considered high. However, they did not know that they were only thinking about half of what Chu Hen had obtained. 600,000 beast fruits, according to the Northern Ghan Chamber of Commerce's evaluation of 50 million upper-grade primordial crystal stones, would be 30 billion. As a result, in a Northern Song Tower auction, Chu Hen's confidence was especially ample. At that time, a Heaven and Earth Black and Yellow order was only sold for a sky-high price of 8 billion. With Chu Hen's assets, he could easily obtain 3 Heaven and Earth Black and Yellow orders. Of course, in Chu Hen's eyes, 8 billion upper-grade primordial crystal stones to buy a Heaven and Earth Black and Yellow order was a complete waste. In addition to the 3 Heaven and Earth Black and Yellow orders given by Yi Yao, Chu Hen had 5. Only 1 Heaven's order was left before he could achieve great success. In addition to the many treasures he had obtained from Lu Chuanfeng and the others, he could also form a very large number. Since he had so many chips on him, only a fool would use the 1,000 beast fruits to trade. Immediately, Chu Hen began to squander the 1,000 beast fruits without restraint. He continuously threw the 1,000 beast fruits in his hands to various areas of the Guanbao mountain range. Rivulets, ravines, cliffs, caves, deep ponds, swamps, etc. Chu Hen's figure appeared in every place where demonic beasts roamed. One after another, the 1,000 beast fruits took root and quickly grew into dazzling, strange flowers and plants. From morning to night, Chu Hen did not stop for a moment. He wandered around the vast and endless mountain range and spread his net over a large area. He did not believe that he would not have a satisfactory harvest. As the 1,000 beast fruits fell all over the demonic beast mountain range, it caused the originally dangerous mountain range to become even more restless. The roars of demonic beasts fighting and killing could be heard from all directions. Obviously, the demonic beasts were engaged in a fierce battle for the 1,000 beast fruit. Phew, I'm dead tired. These should be enough. Chu Hen let out a long sigh of relief, and a relaxed smile appeared on his face. After a whole day of hard work, a total of 400 wanshou fruits had been scattered. This net was definitely huge. He kept the remaining 200,000 beast fruits as a backup. After all, the victorious East State was huge, and there were many mountain ranges with monsters. In every mountain range, the monsters at the top of the food chain were like pyramids. The stronger the monsters, the fewer they were. When the time came, he could try another place. It would be much better than focusing on one place. Next, I just need to wait for you to take the bait. Chapter 695. Screech. The loud and clear cry of the eagle pierced through the sky. This was a heavily guarded area. Mountains in the distance surrounded the valley, forming a huge natural barrier. Spiritual fog lingered nearby. The yin and yang were dim, and the mountains and rivers were intertwined. The natural beauty of the world seemed to merge into one. This was a huge valley with steep terrain. The scenery in the valley was beautiful. It was filled with dense, celestial qi. There were jade palaces inside the valley, and jade pavilions outside the valley. Majestic eagles spread their wings and soared in the sky, as if they were the loyal guards of this world. At the entrance of the valley, there was a giant stone tablet that was over 100 zhang tall. 3 large words were carved on the stone tablet: Wuong Valley. As one of the top 10 powerhouses in the Victory Dong Prefecture, Innocence Valley had an insurmountable position in the hearts of countless people. For hundreds of years, no one had dared to invade this place. Whoosh! At that moment, a few figures with powerful auras were flying rapidly towards Wuong Valley from the void. These people had cold expressions, and their eyes were sharp. With one look, one could tell they were not ordinary people. In the middle of them was a young girl who was less than 20 years old. The young girl stood in a golden halo. Her indifferent eyes looked somewhat wooden. Screech! At this moment, a loud eagle cry rang out in the sky above Innocence Valley. Then, a dozen fierce-looking guards flew out to greet them. "Protector Kuang Xiong, you're back?" The leading middle-aged guard said respectfully. Kuang Xiong flung his sleeves and asked in a deep voice, "Has the young master returned?" "Protector, the young master has been waiting in the Heavenly Go Pavilion for a long time. He instructed us to bring Miss Yu to see him as soon as you return." "All right." Kuang Xiong didn't pause at all. Instead, he led the few people behind him deeper into the valley. Heavenly Go Pavilion. This was the pavilion named after Innocence Valley's young master, Shinto Itian. This pavilion was grand and imposing. It was more than 300 meters tall, and it was built on the peak of a mountain. From a distance, it looked like a pavilion in the sky. Standing on it, one would feel as if they were standing at the very top, looking down on all the other mountains. The Heavenly Go Pavilion's defenses did not look very strict. One could even say that there were no obstructions. Not a single guard could be seen outside the magnificent pavilion. It gave people a feeling that it wasn't very important. But in fact, that was not the case. In the entire Innocence Valley, aside from the place where the Valley Master, Shinto Kong, lived, the Heavenly Go Pavilion had the tightest security. Everyone in the Victory Estate knew that Shinto Ichien had 4 protectors under him. Besides special reasons, the 4 protectors could be said to never leave Shinto Ichien's side, and Kwang Xiong was one of them. The Heavenly Go Pavilion's doors opened wide. Kwang Xiong led the crowd into the pavilion. "Young master, your subordinate Furious Bear has come to report." The moment Kwang Xiong stepped into the Heavenly Go Pavilion, he knelt on one knee, showing a respectful expression. The guards behind him also knelt on the ground respectfully. Only Yao stood there with an indifferent gaze. Her body emitted a chill like an ice blade, giving off a dangerous aura. The interior of the pavilion could be said to be extremely luxurious. It was resplendent and majestic. Even the floor was paved with precious gold and wood. Such a luxurious scene could even leave the royal palaces of the dynasties outside in the dust. 3 people stood on both sides of the hall. They were 2 men and 1 woman. These 3 people all gave off an aura no weaker than Kwang Xiong's. They were none other than Shinto Itien's 3 other guards, Xialong, Shui Chun, and Azure Snake. Azure Snake was the only female among the 4 protectors. However, she was the most feared. Her looks were not bad, but she gave off an extremely dangerous vibe. Her green robes were alluring, and her makeup was thick and gaudy. She was staring coldly at Yi Yao, who was standing behind Furious Bear, with a hint of playfulness in her eyes. At the top of the hall, there was a faint curtain. Through the curtain, one could vaguely see a large and luxurious bed and chair. Occasionally, a young woman's coquettish laughter rang out from behind the curtain. Come here," an indifferent and magnetic male voice rang out from behind the curtain. The eyes of Kwang Xiong and the others in the hall trembled, and they revealed deep reverence from the bottom of their hearts. Subsequently, Yao, who was standing behind Kwang Xiong, slowly walked forward and knelt outside the curtain. She spoke in an emotionless voice. Greets master, Yua." This was the new name that Shinto Ichien had given to Yi Yao after he used the soul-parting powder to control her. Soon after, a fiery red sword stretched out from the gap in the curtain and slowly parted the curtain. The sword was completely crystal red, as if it was made from red, flaming crystals. If Chu Hen was here, he would definitely recognize this sword. This was the first item that the Northern Qian Merchant Group had auctioned, the fiery sword. As the curtain was parted, a devilishly handsome young face appeared before everyone's eyes. Shinto Ichien sat on a wide chair with a playful smile on his face. 2 coquettish women, whose clothes did not compete with each other, were tightly clinging to Shinto Ichien. They seemed to be pleased that they had been pampered. It had to be said that Shinto Ichien was an extremely charming man. Apart from his outstanding appearance, his cultivation had also reached the 7th rank of the Earth Profound Realm. Even in the victorious East State, he was a famous figure. Of course, everyone knew that Shinto Ichien was definitely not a kind person. A frivolous smile appeared on his face as he extended the fiery sword in his hand towards Yi Yao. He gently pressed the tip of the sword against her chin and slowly lifted her face. I heard that you're injured?" Shinto Ichien's tone carried a hint of contempt. From his eyes, it could be seen that he valued Yi Yao very much. However, it was only for himself. "Yes," Yi Yao replied indifferently. There was not a trace of emotion in her eyes. "That Lu Chuanfeng is really bold. It's a pity that he's already dead. Otherwise, I would have captured him and killed him as an apology to you," Shinto Ichien said indifferently. He casually withdrew the fiery sword and sat up straight. "Tell me, How many heaven and earth mystic yellow tokens did you get? Please forgive me, master. The 3 heaven and earth mystic yellow tokens that you obtained were all stolen. Oh, Shinto Etienne was slightly surprised when he heard this, but he did not seem to have much of a change in his emotions. Stolen? He then turned his gaze towards Furious Bear and the others who were still kneeling in front of him. Guardian Furious Bear, you didn't kill the person who took you away? I didn't do my job well. Please punish me, young master. Compared to Yi Yao's indifference, Furious Bear was truly afraid of Shinto Etienne. He said reverently, "That bastard is extremely cunning. I was careless and let him escape. I originally wanted to kill him before returning to Innocence Valley. However, the side effect of young lady use Heaven Dust pill is about to take effect. I'm afraid something might go wrong. After weighing the pros and cons, I decided to escort young lady you back first. Don't worry, young master. I'll return to Azure Sea City right away and kill that arrogant bastard." Shinto Etienne's handsome brows raised slightly as he replied indifferently, "Tell me about the situation at that time." "Yes, young master." Furious Bear immediately told Shinto Etienne everything that had happened after he found Chu Hen and Yi Yao in detail. Naturally, he could not avoid adding details to the story. He cursed Chu Hen for being cunning and said he only let Chu Hen go because he was afraid you would make a mistake on the way back to Innocence Valley. After listening to Furious Bear's story, the green-clad woman, Qing Shi, who sat on the left side of the hall, sneered in disdain. "Umph, what a useless thing." "You." Furious Bear frowned as a trace of anger appeared on his face. Qing Shi smiled coldly. "Even an idiot would know that person is definitely hiding under the rubble. You just have to trick him a few more times, and you'll definitely be able to trick him out. As expected, a person with well-developed limbs has a very simple mind." Stinking woman. Furious Bear cursed inwardly. If he was not kneeling, he would have cursed her back a long time ago. Shinto Etienne was temperamental. At this moment, Furious Bear did not dare to say anything. However, Shinto Etienne did not seem to mind. It was as though he did not care about the loss of the heaven and earth mystical yellow order. His gaze returned to Yi Yao, and his eyes revealed traces of torchlight. I want to know why he didn't kill you?" As soon as these words left his mouth, everyone in the hall looked at Yi Yao suspiciously. Indeed, since that person's objective was the heaven and earth mystical yellow order, he had already completed his objective the moment he took control of Yi Yao. Why would he bring a burden like her with him to flee? Not only did he encounter the people from Shanghai City, but he even encountered the powerhouses from Innocence Valley and almost lost his life. However, from the beginning until the end, Yi Yao's expression did not change at all. She replied unhurriedly, "He wants to obtain the method to control yin and yang energy from me. Then, the fragment of the divine Tao stone I gave you has been snatched away as well?" "Yes," Yi Yao replied. When Shinto Etienne heard this, he frowned for the first time. It was obvious the fragment of the divine Tao stone was much more important than the 3 heaven and earth mystical yellow orders. Furious Bear became even more panicked when he saw this. "Young lord, if I knew such an important thing had been snatched away, I wouldn't have let that person leave, even if I had to die. Please give me a chance, young lord. I'll bring his head, the fragment of the divine Tao stone, and the heaven and earth mystical yellow order back." "Umph. If that person could escape from under your nose, let alone now that you're in 2 different places." The green-clothed woman named Qing, she sneered again. The other 2 guardians, Xia Lung and Xue Chun, also had cold expressions on their faces as well. Apart from feeling shocked, the doubts in everyone's hearts disappeared one after another. It made sense why that person had spared Yi Yao's life for the sake of the method to control yin and yang energy. After all, Yi Yao had killed dozens of powerhouses from the Northern Qin Trading Company in Shanghai City with just the moon encasing sky dance, 1,000 illusions. There are not many people who would not be tempted by such a powerful absolute martial technique. The atmosphere in the hall had clearly become silent. Although Yi Yao had thought of an excuse before coming here to pretend to be controlled by the soul-parting powder, she was not 100% confident that she could deceive Shinto Etienne. Yao thought to herself that if Shinto Etian saw through her, she would kill herself immediately. She could not let Chu Hen find out and risk his life to come to Innocence Valley to save her.